Good evening. I call to order the June 22nd, 2020 business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and ask and request everyone in the audience to please silence cell phones and electronic devices. Ms. Bolton.
Thank you, Madam President. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance now. So for those that are listening and participating, I'll start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Present.
Ms. Bolton?
Present.
Mrs. Bowers?
Here.
Mr. Lindy?
Here.
Mr. Messer?
Present.
Mr. Morosky?
Here.
President Jones?
Here. Thank you. I need a motion to approve the minutes from the special meeting June 10th, 2020, the business meeting June 10th, 2020, the special meeting June 15th, 2020, and the emergency special meeting June 18th, 2020.
So moved.
Thank you. Is second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Bowers. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as presented. Okay, Ms. Bowers, as chair of the Student Achievement Committee, please present the June 12th, 2020 committee meeting report.
Absolutely. As President Jones explained, the Student Achievement Committee met on Friday, June 12th, 2:30 via Blue Jean video conferencing. Superintendent Mitchell presented to the team or brought to the group, the committee, standards with a collaboration between the Buckeye Association for School Administrators and Ohio Department of Education. We were looking at measures or adjusting some of the measures on her evaluation. And she presented these were in alignment with the standards of the state. The standards that she presented were Standard 1, Vision, Continuous Improvement and Focus of District Work. Standard 2, Communication and Collaboration. Standard 3, Policies and Governance. Standard 4, Instruction. Standard 5, Resources. And with confirmation from her, these were replacing her functional leadership measures on the previous evaluation. Again, she explained that these were in alignment with the state and wished to have those as part of her evaluation. She also reported that her goals for 2021 will relate to the following goals of student-centered decision-making, which is part of the strategic engagement, strategic planning, engagement, STAT plan, health and safety, optimized capabilities. A couple of things that she that I noted was that there was not a community engagement focus for the goal for the strategic plan, and I instructed her that that would be beneficial to have that as part of her goals also, and she obliged and would present that to us at a later time. But the growth and progress, she wanted to know that there was some progress and achievement in that area, and we just wanted to make sure that noted to align appropriately with the strategic plan. We are actually that's part of the presentation tonight is to accept this recommendation that the STEP committee or the STAT committee agreed upon during our meeting with the superintendent regarding her evaluation. The superintendent also talked to us about, we went back to the Gilligan family and the naming of schools. And she is going to reach out. She has reached out to a family member. And at that particular time, she was waiting on a callback. And some of the ideas that came out of what school to name or present to the family to cover Governor John's name to be covered by the governor's name was Lighthouse and the Mozart building, which are two buildings that we purchased within the last 6 months. And we kind of left that up to the superintendent to present to the family the options and allow her to decide on, and the family, which school that would be one of the two new purchases. District calendar was on our discussion, and that's going to be a TBD. We're going to probably come back to that at a later date, as we're still deciding on a plan for the reopening of schools, which will be in alignment with that calendar. We also had a conversation regarding College Credit Plus courses this year. That was on our calendar. And Assistant Superintendent Murphy explained that during the 1920 academic school year, we had a compiled partnership with UC, Chatfield, and Cincinnati State. She also wanted to make mention that next year we are going to include St. Clair College in partnering with us for College Credit Plus for our students. Overall, there are 36 courses presented across multiple schools. Some schools have higher numbers than others. What was expressed was that the creation of cross-functional CCP steering committee is going to draft recommendations addressing strategic growth of the program to make it more equitable across the schools. So noticing that there is a gap in that across a lot of our schools, there's a committee that's going to be formed per the administration. Let me see. We talked about the 3E pathways. Totally 1,904 students graduated from CPS this year, and out of the 1,904, 1,758 have declared one of the 3E pathways. Data will be collected quarterly for next school year to help the secondary education develop strategies to reduce the percentage. We have a small percentage of undecided students that have not declared, and I think Assistant Superintendent Murphy explained that number may go up once summer school is over. There may be a path for some of those students to fall into, so that we're looking for that 1,758 to go up to one of the 3 pathways. We also talked about graduation and some changes that are coming for the classes of 21 and beyond. For 2021, there are some, in 2022, I believe the presentation was about alternative requirements for those classes just because of the COVID-19 and how that's going to affect those graduating classes. But the rising sophomores, we talked about some changes in having seals attached. There are 9 state-approved and designed seals that the state is saying that they have to offer, but there are 3 local seals that we as a district are focused on our students aligning with. And one of those is student engagement seal, a fine arts seal, and a community service seal. And basically these seals give the students a chance to demonstrate academic, technical, and professional skills and knowledge that align with their passions, interests, and plan next steps for after high school. Mr. Leach, Director of Testing, talked about identifying students at risk and not qualifying for a high school diploma. And basically, this is something that's coming from the state that's being required. It's an Ohio law that's being required for students to have what's called individualized, and I'm saying that, graduation plans. Because what that means is that there are certain criteria that have to be put into place for students who are at risk of not being on track, and then the steps toward helping them get to being on track. So it's a notification process. It's very intense as far as programming and tutoring and family engagement, just to help students meet that mark of graduation. And that is coming up. And basically, during that conversation, the new board policy is going to have to be presented, and we're recommending that board policy of identifying students at risk and not qualifying for a high school diploma, that's going to have to be a new policy put into place. An update on policy 5460, aligning the new graduation requirements for cohorts of 2023, which inclusive of the seals, and then adopting a new policy. That's the new board policy on local diploma seal options for cohorts 2023. So we have to adopt the policy, and then we have to set it up for our students. So the SAC committee is referring the above steps to the policy committee, which Mr. Morosky and I kind of talked about. We were part of the policy committee. Mr. Morosky, did I leave anything out?
That was very thorough and very well done, Chair Bowers. It's exactly what we talked about.
Okay. So these are the Student Achievement Committee minutes.
Thank you. Do board members have questions or comments? Ms. Bolton?
Yes,
Followed by-
thank you. Just would like to maybe add on the Gilligan naming. As everybody knows, I've been very involved with kind of reviewing a lot of our schools' names, and that might be of interest to folks. But I would maybe just augment that one part to say that maybe as a result of our new norm, we might have other names or other schools or facilities too that could be added to that. So I wouldn't want to limit the choice or whatever, or the discussion just to those two, but I do think it's reasonable to limit it to those schools that don't currently carry a particular name. So I have no suggestion, but I do think that we might want to widen that as we look at our new norm developing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lindy?
Thanks, President Jones. Question for Board Member Bowers or Morosky. This is my first time through this part of the year, and so I'm not 100% sure how this works. On the part about the superintendent's evaluation for next year, and listing those different categories with the bullets, what is it was my understanding from the report and the minutes that the proposal is that those get accepted now to be the kind of the backbone of her evaluation for next year. Is that right? And at what point do we decide like what the targets or what the outcomes would be for each of those? Is that also now or is that later?
If I could answer, if I could respond to that, and I think Ms. Bolton, having been the chair previously, I see you, Mike. I believe what they're doing is sort of setting the parameters for further discussion around that. So they set the broad scope measures, and I think that we have to decide, and I believe that's done in SAC committee, where they might give some language and the language to those descriptors. Then it comes back to the board for review and approval. I believe that's correct. So Mr. Morosky had a comment, and then Ms. Bolton, if you wanted to comment on that, that would be appropriate as well. Mr. Morosky.
I was just going to respond directly to Mr. Lindy and say essentially that helping and working with the superintendent to establish those broad parameters, bring it to the board for discussion, ultimate approval, but then to answer your question directly later. So setting the metrics and the goals, et cetera, that'll be later. So we will talk about all that, yeah.
There's so many other important things going on. I'm glad we're also later on going to have time for that. I think that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. So, Ms. Bolton, I don't know if you need to top that, but Mr. Morosky did a great job in explaining that. Thank you.
As did you, Madam President.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay, Mr. Messer, please present the June 17th, 2020 meeting report.
For the STEP committee. Right? Can you hear me okay?
We can. Can you speak up a little louder though? Because you're a little bit far away, but.
Okay, I'll speak into my microphone a little bit more. Yes, so the STEP committee gathered really for the principal purpose of providing some stakeholder input from some of our immediate supporters who helped us develop the strategic plan. There was an initial kind of update in the upfront of kind of where we are, but then quickly went to sharing some of the proposed scenarios for the next school year and sought input. You can see in the notes there was a tremendous amount of just incredibly great feedback. I think one bucket that I want to highlight is I thought there were some really great ideas in that. I think there's an assumption that we will have some sort of virtual option for some of our students some of the time, at least. And, I think there were some really great ideas about how we could make sure that we're providing training for our parents in the upfront to help provide, a little bit more preparatory work for them as they're going to be working with their students in that remote setting. In addition to, I thought there were some great ideas on just having perhaps helplines or support lines where parents could reach out, contact, or students could contact if there were questions on homework. But just you go through the notes, you can see just an immense amount of really positive feedback that, of course, we share with the board and the administration. The superintendent promised to take that back to the teams as they're working through the scenario. So just a thanks to that team for coming together. And they do represent some of our most loyal supporters, but they also represent many different stakeholder groups that I thought each provided such good input. Thank you to them. Submit the notes as.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Okay, so I need a motion to approve the committee minutes as submitted.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Minutes are approved as written. Thank you. Okay.
Ms. Jones?
Yeah.
Ms. Jones, excuse me. Who did the second on the committee minutes?
Well, I don't, verbally, I saw Ms. Bates' hand, so I'll give it to Ms. Bates.
Thanks. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. All righty. Anybody have any kudos? Mr. Lindy.
Yes, I have a couple. I wanted to offer kudos to Shauna Murphy and Josh Holden for the work that they had done engaging students' voices and their perspective around this moment in American history that we're living through. I think that they were very impressive to the entire administrative team, and wanted to say thank you to them publicly. I also wanted to offer a kudo to two CPS instructional employees, Chris Lord and Melissa Kincaid, for the professional development they led on racism and anti-racism in education on Juneteenth, on Friday. But had almost 150 educators from CPS who decided to apply. And I think that was remarkable. And I'm grateful to work alongside all those people. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other kudos? All right. Mr. Morosky.
I'm just going to offer a kudos to our public who has been as engaged with us these past few weeks as they ever have, and looking at the amount of attendees really engaged right now. And we certainly appreciate all of the support and feedback as we navigate all these waters. It's good to know that we have a village out there.
Thank you, Mr. Morosky. Okay. Ms. Bates, do we have any retirements?
Yes, we do. From our certificate personnel, we have Kimberly Chambers Nelms, Susan E. Smith, Nola Shirley Taylor, Beverly Reed Troutman, Molly A. Wilkins. From our civil service personnel, Marion Austin, Patricia Estese, and Deanna Staubach. So the board would like to congratulate these individuals and thank them for their service to our children and wish them well in this new chapter of their lives.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Okay, so we are now at the item on our agenda for hearing the public. The board prides itself on being as transparent and open as possible. Consistent with the state's direction to minimize public gatherings, we are convening this video conference call to include opportunity for public comment. So here are the specific instructions for participation in hearing of the public. To speak, you will need to send a request by clicking on the hand icon on your screen. Mac and iPad users are able to access the raised hand icon located on your device. The broadcast is open right now, so I would encourage everyone that if you want to speak, please do not wait for the previous speaker to hang up. Please raise your hands right now. So there's no need to wait for the previous speaker. An effort will be made to call each speaker in the best order possible, but we promise you we're going to try to get to everybody. Once the request has been granted by Treasurer Wagner, you will receive a notice on your screen. Click yes to go interactive. If you do not want your video active, please disable the video camera icon. After speaking, you will briefly see the welcome screen again as you transition back to the live stream meeting. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak, and Mrs. Wagner will be our timekeeper. When the buzzer goes off, your 3 minutes are up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel items. Now, so we should have raised hands. We have 877 attendees, and we're anticipating that there's going to be lots of public comment, which we welcome. But I would ask everybody to please be considerate of the 3-minute time limit. We want everybody to have a chance. I promise not to cut you off in mid-sentence, but we do want to be respectful of the time. So please, Ms. Wagner, we can get started.
Okay, our first speaker is Ryan Mooney Bullock. You may begin.
Hello, good evening. My name is
Hi.
Ryan Mooney Bullock. I am the Executive Director of Green Umbrella, which is the Regional Sustainability Alliance for Greater Cincinnati. I am also a proud CPS graduate and the parent of 4 current CPS students. I'm addressing you tonight, though, as the facilitator of a network that we call CPS Outside. We exist to help expand access to outdoor opportunities to all Cincinnati Public School students. By now, we have all heard how good spending time outside is for us. From improved learning outcomes to attention span to mental and physical health, the benefits of time outside are numerous and well documented. This fall, we have even more benefits to add to the list, reducing potential coronavirus transmissions by spreading students out and allowing ample fresh air flow. CPS Outside is a network of organizations, public agencies, and other key stakeholders that stand ready to support Cincinnati Public Schools in meeting its strategic priorities to cultivate active and healthy lifestyle choices in environmentally responsible students and to deepen external collaborative relationships. As we shared in the PDF we submitted prior to the meeting, we have developed a framework for how we might be able to work together towards these shared goals. With me tonight are 4 other team members from Cincinnati Parks, Cincinnati Recreation Commission, the Civic Garden Center, and the Cincinnati Museum Center. They will be sharing details of their organization's commitment to this work of improving equity in outdoor education and a few thoughts on how we might do so. Our 3-pronged approach includes increasing outdoor after-school programming, providing break day programming at community learning centers, and working with CPS staff to help increase their comfort level around taking kids outside and using that time effectively. We're also working on a variety of data collection efforts to better understand what partner relationships we already have in place at each CPS school and what outdoor learning resources those teachers have access to. Also included in the packet is a map showing the proximity of all of our schools to parks or recreation areas. And we were so excited to see that all but a few of them are within walking distance of green space. These walkable field trip destinations can provide exciting opportunities to build community, a sense of place, and appreciation for the natural world. We know that this fall holds many uncertainties, and we want you to know that our network is here to help you plan for the certainty that all students can thrive when they spend time outside. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yes, I believe it's Gia, and I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name, but go ahead.
Hi, my name is Gia Giammarinaro. It rolls right off the tongue, no problem. And thank you for letting me speak on behalf of CPS Outside. I am a staff member at Cincinnati Park Board. I'm a naturalist. I've been a nature educator for about 21 years now. And I started off working exclusively with CPS schools. So I've been striving to connect the dots between environmental education and students forever, because I really strongly believe that every child deserves nature. And on that, in line with that, Cincinnati Parks came to that same conclusion back in the 1930s and began programs in line with our own missions to bring people and nature together. Parks Explore Nature program, the program I work for, has been designed to connect people to nature in a tangible, meaningful, memorable way that can last a lifetime. A student cannot aspire to a career in environmental science, field science, biology, any science really, without exposure and connection to nature. A future scientist with little or no exposure to nature will be disconnected to the why of what they do. Without exposure to nature, there is no context or inspiration. Even a discipline like physics and chemistry will fall flat without a connection to the why they're doing it. Cincinnati Parks has had a long-standing commitment to the citizens of Cincinnati to provide green spaces, events, and programs for everyone. The Explore Nature team in particular provides content standard-friendly field trips, professional development, and is now developing virtual opportunities as well. In 1999, Cincinnati Parks was one of the founding member organizations of the Greater Cincinnati Environmental Educators, a group formed with the hopes of consolidating and collaborating local EE resources. And since then, we have provided an annual educator expo for 21 years at the zoo. That's gathered hundreds of CPS teachers. We've developed professional development opportunities for each other, teachers, and collaborate on other programs as well. What we had hoped to accomplish, but haven't quite yet, is a cohesive way to serve CPS. Almost every single one of the 40-plus agencies affiliated with GCEE serve CPS in some way. We've provided field trips, resources, professional development, assemblies, equipment, gardens, you name it. We want this to be more coordinated and tangible. We want it to be a movement that helps the students, the teachers, and the administrators of CPS in a meaningful way. As you know, we've provided a map, an up-to-date map of the parks property that Ryan mentioned, and many of us are more than willing, happy, in fact, to meet teachers to evaluate the potential of the sites near them, to help them use the sites themselves, in addition to having us help them directly and present to their students. CPS has always, Cincinnati Park Board has always been a committed partner in getting CPS students outside. With the board's blessing, we would like to become committed partners in helping CPS teachers do the same. We look forward to the chance to weave EE into the fabric of CPS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker is Lethell Bryant. You may begin.
I can be seen. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lethell Bryant. I am with the Cincinnati Recreation Commission. CPS and CRC has had a long-standing relationship for decades, helping to improve the educational outcomes and mental and physical health and well-being of the youth and families in the Cincinnati community. I'm here as one of the representatives for the CPS Outside Initiative, and CPS and CR as another opportunity to work alongside CPS and other community agencies for the benefit of our youth in the overall Cincinnati. I'd just like to talk about our role in the initiative is to participate in after-school programming. So what I want to do is just provide a high-level overview of what we envision the outdoor after-school program to be. As we know, currently there are several successful unique hands-on outdoor experiences which reinforce and extend in emotional skills. The after-school components rely on existing and then also developing new partnerships between schools, after-school providers such as CRC, us, YMCA, and then outdoor other educators in our network, as was explained before. The outdoor program has primarily 4 goals. The 4 goals are to provide equitable access to nature and outdoor programming. And nature programs will be facilitated by trained educators and supported through quality experiences and curriculum. The second goal is to provide many benefits of time outdoors to our students, to include benefits to the mental and physical health, as well as other proven educational benefits. The third goal is to create a scalable model of existing after-school and outdoor educational partnerships. And what our plan is once we create and test these models, our goal is to be able to extend it to other centers, other locations, to be able to serve more students within the community. And lastly, our last primary goal is to test new models of after-school programming, which would not require the use of buildings such as YMCA's. We wouldn't use, let me back up, I apologize. We wouldn't use CPS facilities, but other facilities such as our centers, CPS centers, as well as other agencies. And the whole goal of doing that would to be able to increase partnerships and participation and access. As was expressed earlier, many of your facilities are within walking distance to a lot of our agencies, the parks, our centers, as well as other agencies. So this will provide an opportunity for students after school to be able to go to the local facility and participate in these programs. A typical partnership would consist of 3 roles, and pretty much those roles are the school facilitator. The school provides a teacher, coach, paraprofessional to be an in-house liaison. The after-school partner, and that partner, again, some partnerships will include after-school partners where the service provider is not in the CPS building, but again, something like areas of CRC. Yes? We're running up.
Your 3 minutes are about up. If you want to finish your thought, however.
Okay. Well, I will thought, my overall thought is we just really want to say that CPS, or I say CPS and CRC has worked many years to collaboratively, and we at CRC would enjoy and look forward to being a part of this CPS Outside Initiative. And that's it.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Karen, is it Kale?
It's Collie, like the dog.
Ollie, sorry. Thank you so much. It's your turn.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us speak with you tonight. And I'd just like to say that over the last few months, as we've had these meetings with CPS Outside members and joined by CPS, some administrators and staff, telling us how hard you've all been working, I really commend you and sympathize with the many challenges ahead of you. And thanks for all of your great work on behalf of the families and students at CPS. If the goal is to realize the many benefits of outdoor education, it's ultimately those teaching the children who are going to make that happen. But we know that hands-on outdoor instruction fundamentally changes both where and how teachers work with their students. We know that teachers may feel hesitation as they approach outdoor learning opportunities, since most have no experience with learning outside of a traditional classroom. Teachers are also likely to struggle to connect their curriculum to the outdoors. But an outdoor classroom can be created and used with almost every curriculum for any population of children and in virtually any education program. Cincinnati Public Schools could partner with the environmental and nature-based organizations that are part of CPS Outside, with local universities and experienced volunteers to increase training for teachers ready to expand their outdoor education skills. Our approach to professional development opportunities for outdoor learning is accomplished in 3 phases, so as to best ensure successful integration and long-term sustainability. Phase 1 begins this summer. We'd like to identify a cadre of outdoor teacher champions those already experienced with taking students outside and comfortable with managing outdoor classrooms. These teachers will be showcased as early adopters and invited in later phases to help mentor colleagues. We also think it makes sense to survey teachers to really learn what they and their students most need in order to offer quality education outside. We also think it makes sense to target some pilot schools where available green space, teacher champions, and a supportive administration already exists. And we've listed 7 of those schools that's in your packet. We're also ready to provide online professional development opportunities for teachers who may be ready to engage during this summer. There are a few no-cost options available through our local universities and some of the CPS Outside partners, including a series recently released by UC's Arlett Center for Early Childhood Educators. When school reopens this fall, our network is excited to support schools with on-site trainings to help them use key learning and play features on their campuses and nearby parks or historic sites. The Civic Garden Center, where I am the lucky to be the executive director, is developing a walk and talk pilot program, which we can pilot in 5 schools this fall. Other partners in our network, including Cincinnati Parks, can provide comparable programming to help educators to get to know their campus and their outdoor resources and how to connect them to the curriculum. The Civic Garden Center.
Ms. Colley, time is running out, so if you could please finish your thought, we'd appreciate that.
And then in phase 2, we'd like to work with CPS to design a professional development opportunities. And we've already identified a lot of great existing resources, high quality resources. Then we would like to develop those and connect them so teachers could receive for their outdoor learning professional development courses they complete. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Colley.
Okay, our next speaker is Whitney Owens. You may begin.
Thank you for having us this evening. My name is Whitney Owens, and I am Chief Learning Officer at Cincinnati Museum Center. We love our longstanding CPS partnership, from bringing our programs on wheels to CPS schools, to including CPS students in our youth programs and STEM Girls initiatives, to sharing online learning with CPS families through now CPS TV. Between our Children's Museum, our History Museum, and our Natural History and Science Museum, we provide rich resources for lifelong learning about our world. CMC is thrilled to be part of the CPS Outside Network, and we're particularly excited about the potential for providing breaks programming for CPS students. This could include programming during summer, winter, and spring breaks, as well as teacher professional development days at CPS schools that will help prevent learning loss and spark kids' interest in science and nature. You may be aware that Museum Center has a large and vibrant camps program that we would draw from for breaks programming. We served more than 1,400 kids last summer at both Union Terminal and at locations throughout the community. So we are ready to go. We are particularly excited about the possibility to activate strong neighborhood relationships and partnerships with other CPS Outside partners and community grassroots partners, and with community learning centers, including those in the West End at Hayes Porter, with partners such as Seven Hills Neighborhood Houses, and in Price Hill with Euler School and partners such as Price Hill, Will, and others. We offer engaging programs on topics from dinosaurs to archaeology, and parents consistently tell us how our programs help their kids feel safe and comfortable, help provide vital and enriching childcare, get kids so excited about science that they can't wait to tell their families about what they're learning. We are committed to the CPS Outside Partnership and hope we'll get the chance to work together with the board to inclusively bring the benefits of outdoor education to all kids in our community. Cincinnati is the home of collective impact, which makes a strong network of partners working together to serve our kids so fitting. And as COVID has changed the way we teach and learn, now might just be the perfect moment for such an innovative and exciting collaboration. We look forward to learning and to sharing more, and thanks so much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Owens. Next speaker.
Speaker is Susan Riccardi. You need to accept the invitation. And while we wait for Susan, we'll go ahead and bring in the next speaker, Yusuf Munir. Please accept the invitation. And then Andrea Spenny, you will be next.
Okay. I don't know if people are having difficulty. There it is. Okay.
Hi, is it my turn?
Yes, you can
Yes.
go. You got 3 minutes.
Okay, hi, my name is Yusuf Munir. I am a student at Walnut Hills High School. I am going into my senior year. Miss Bolton, it's nice to see you again. It's been a while. I just came here to talk about something really important that's going on that I think needs to be addressed, especially considering all the events going on in our own city. I think we have to talk about the role of the police in our schools. And I think if this meeting is supposed to be about how we're promoting an equal opening of schools or whatever, I think we have to talk about the role that police officers play in any time we open our schools, when they're inside of our schools. And I think I want to share my own personal story with the police. Some of you know that in September, I, along with some of my friends, planned a September walkout as part of the global climate change. What some of you don't know is that there was a police presence there, and as there always is at a high school with a few black students. When we were trying to leave that walkout, which is our First Amendment right, we were in our car. I was with a few of my friends, and while we were sitting in the car, a police officer started banging on the window and threatened to throw us in jail if we did not get out of the car. This was before we had even left the campus, and I just think that it's a thing that you would pay police officers to threaten your students with jail time for something as simple as skipping a school to practice their First Amendment right. I think you owe it to your students, especially your black and brown students, to not only ties with the police, but also publicly denounce them. I think you all were elected officials, and your job is to protect us students and do what's best for our community. And what's best for our community is not police in our schools. There are statistics upon statistics upon statistics about the negative effect that they have both on black students' mental health as well as the intense, how it amplifies the effect of the pipeline. Something that is especially important in the CPS school district, which has a large amount of black students. And so I think if you don't do your jobs and cut ties with the police and defund them, we will, 1, vote you out, and 2, you will not see peace until that happens. We will continue to protest at schools. We will continue to protest at your meetings. We will be everywhere and anywhere until this is done, because lives are at stake and you owe it to us. Remember that. You owe it to us.
Thank you, Mr. Munir. We can't hear you, Jen. No. You have to unmute.
I'm not muted. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. So Andrea Spenny was next. If you're out there, Jillian Sella, you're next. Please accept the invitation. And then after Jillian is Benjamin Jarvis. Andrea Spenny, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. My name is Andrea Spenny, and I'm a proud CPS teacher at Woodward Career Technical High School. I want to thank our board president and Mr. Morosky for responding to my email I sent last week with student feedback regarding the reopening of our schools. As you should know by now, I truly believe all of my students' voices are more important than my own and deserve to be heard more than my own. When I say my students, I'm speaking of every single student in CPS, but especially our Black students, especially our Black students living in poverty, especially our Black students who don't fall into the category of the image the district likes to portray on billboards, on our website, and on social media. However, my students' voices cannot adequately be heard if the district is not inclusive of all students and does not communicate effectively with teachers and families. In addition, I am here demanding a safe, equitable, and anti-racist reopening of our schools for all students, allowing all students the option to return at least 2 days a week. You may be thinking, we started to host our Speak Up, Speak Out sessions. Fantastic, that's a start. However, if the district wanted all students' voices included in this panel, students would not be handpicked. They would not have students log in early to practice what they are going to say. At the first session, I had 3 students included on this panel, which made me incredibly happy. However, it did not make me happy that teachers and families weren't informed of this first session via Schoology, email, or robocalls, yet these are things we pay millions of dollars for. I found out about the first session by someone messaging me, telling me that one of my students was talking about our classroom. When I reached out to my students to explain how proud of them I was, one of my students called me and he said, "Excuse my language, but Mrs. Spenny, that was some bullshit." I asked what he meant by that, and he said he's tired of being asked to make our district look good because he is a straight A student, because he is an athlete, and he is a leader. He explained that he had to get on almost an hour before the actual meeting to go over every question that would be asked and practice what he had to say. Sadly, this is not the first time I've had this conversation with this student. It also makes me angry that CPS continues to utilize Facebook to push out positive information they want the public to see, yet does not advertise our board meetings in which the public can voice their opinions adequately. For today's meeting, when you log into our main board website, you have to click on meeting schedules. They are not there. The agenda and the instructions for logging in. The web-based calendar, they are not there. When you click on more details, they are not there. You have to click on 6 or 7 different things to find the instructions for today's meeting. You released a statement after the murder of George Floyd. Again, great, that's a start, but talk is cheap without action. Please know that just as much pressure our city council is currently receiving around our city budget, you too will receive in regards to ending the institutionalized racism that so disgustingly permeates our district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Jillian Sella, you were next. Are you out there? Okay, Benjamin Jarvis, are you out there? Next after Benjamin is Jillian with no last name. Please accept the invitation. And then Liam O'Shaughnessy, you would be after that. Please accept the invitation. Kurt, Ashley Harris.
Okay, we have Jillian, it looks like.
Okay. Go ahead, Jillian.
All right. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Hi. Sorry. I think you have my last name wrong, so I'm sorry I missed you. I just wanted to kind of give my opinion on 2 different matters. I emailed the school board, I think actually all of you, during the last school board meeting. And I just really wanted to reiterate that I think it's exceptionally important that all of our students get at least some time in the school building. I think it is unbelievably unfair if we ask, the older kids to stay at home or the younger kids to stay at home. Everybody needs the social development, and the parents can't be expected to provide that for them. That's the one thing we can't do, is give them time with their teachers and time with their friends. I have 3 kids in 3 different grades in 3 different schools, kindergarten, 5th grade, and 7th grade. And I just can't do it all for them. And so, I don't want them in school 5 days a week because I don't think we can do it safely, but they do all need some time. I also want to echo what Andrea Spenny said, which is we really need to reevaluate the presence of the police department in our schools. Our students aren't criminals, and when we treat them as such, all we do is reiterate to them that they can't be trusted. And when they already have so much on their backs, it's just not fair to them. So please consider breaking your contract with Cincinnati Police Department. There are other venues that you can take, more social workers, more healthcare workers. I know it's expensive, but it can be as expensive as the police department. And that's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, Liam, you're next. You got 3 minutes.
Hi, am I able to be heard?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. So, hi, my name is Liam O'Shaughnessy, and I am a student at Wyoming High School. So given the events that have happened recently with the murder of George Floyd and the riots and protests that have happened as a result of that, I think that it's very important that we reevaluate the role of the police in our school system. So I believe that CPS should remove police from their buildings. A study in 2008 published by LaJoie and Fagan found that higher police presence among New York students was the sample. It decreases black male test scores significantly. In addition, Viceverse 2018 found that more school police decreases the graduation and college attendance rates. We don't want to put our students through the school to prison pipeline. And furthermore, we don't want to aggravate any trauma that already happened, that already has been experienced by Black students and by students of color, which 70%, according to the Department of Education, 70% of students arrested on campus or handed over to the police from school are people of color. When students don't feel safe in their schools, they cannot learn. So as Dr. Ibram X. Kendi said, policies that promote racial equity are anti-racist and policies that do not do so are racist. If we want to be a firmly anti-racist school district, we must remove police from the CPS. My own personal school, Wyoming, is a safe school because it has well-funded programs and is well-funded in general, not because of police presence, which it does not have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Benjamin Jarvis, you're next.
Hi, my name is Ben Jarvis. I am a teacher at Taft Information Technology High School. I would just like to, first of all, thank the students who have called in and commend them for doing so. And I just want to amplify their message and the message of other members in the community, especially Mass Action for Black Liberation, when I demand that this board bring about an end to CPS's relationship with the Cincinnati Police Department. As a teacher, as an educator, I've seen firsthand the trauma that our kids experience. I've seen firsthand the tension that having a police officer and the re-triggering of trauma that having a police officer brings to students in our school buildings. I want to commend the board for their work during this difficult time. I want to say that this board has before it tremendous opportunity, this historic time to bring about real material change to the conditions of the children in our school system. And again, that's material change that goes beyond just words. The words are certainly important, but material change would be, first of all, allowing our students to come back to school at least 2 days a week, and secondly, removing Cincinnati Police Department officers from our school buildings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Melissa Burluck, you're next.
Thank you. My name is Melissa Perlak. Most people just call me Missy. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
So I'm from Pleasant Ridge, Montessori. I've been on ILT the past couple years. I'm highly involved with PTO. And I run the PRM Rocks website, and I have 4 kids at PRM. I am super proud of PRM. It's a really unique place. It's CPS's only neighborhood Montessori school. So I have very short points. One, I would just love for you guys to really address the Montessori concerns. I know that we're not the only Montessori school in the district, and I know a lot of us are concerned about with the possible choices that we have, the uniqueness of Montessori might be greatly affected, especially if they choose the hybrid option. Some of the students might be split up, and that would be rather devastating to some students who have a 3-year or an ongoing 3-year relationship with their teacher. And especially, particularly for families, like for me, I have 4 children at PRM, and I would hope that if they choose the hybrid option, that you would find a way for families to be able to stay at the same location. But I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I thank you for making these meetings available to the public and giving us a chance to speak. I appreciate you taking our comments and concerns this past couple of weeks as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Ashley Harris, you're next. Your 3 minutes.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm a concerned parent on behalf of other concerned parents, and I'm wondering what plans do you guys plan to put in place for the physical health of the students with COVID and as well as racial equality. So those are 2 big things that we are facing as a world, and we'll have some issues with at some point. So before the early school break was announced, parents were lined up in Children's Hospital because their children had strep and the flu while the school would not close down to sanitize. And when you talk to the superiors there, they would say, oh, well, it's only 117 kids out. So that, that's kind of alarming to send your child no need help with the flu and strep, let alone something like COVID. So secondly, I want to address the racial issues that we're having. Before any of this happened out with George Floyd and everything else, we were dealing with racial issues as early as first and second grade at schools, with students being called racial slurs and the schools facilitating it. Speaking to teachers, other parents who've experienced it, the teacher and principal would basically dismiss the parent's issue. As a parent with a minority child, this is an issue. After speaking to people at the Board of Education, no one could point me in the right direction, or any of the other parents, as well as some of your, I'll just speak on one person in particular, the general counsel. It was made to be a joke. It was not handled. And there's a huge problem for a group of second graders to be called racial slurs. And no one at the school dealt with it. They said, oh, well, how don't, it's being handled. Why wouldn't you address it with everyone instead of trying to sweep it under the rug? Documents were sent to the principal as well as your general counsel, and it was made to be a joke. So we would like to work with you guys and see what you guys have in place and how you would like to help us before we have to reach out further, to other places to get some help. You think we want to send our child and our kids back with COVID lurking and racial issues? It's a disaster. And we don't have enough help. I'm disgusted. I'm mortified, and I'm saddened. Like I said, at the age of first and second grade, no child, there's no room for hate. And if the teachers don't have diversity training or cultural training, of course, they deal with these children differently because they know no other way. They're not being made to be held accountable. There's issues, and we want you guys to deal with it as we give it to you before we put it on a platter. I stand with Mr. Manier and that teacher. It's disgusting. These are our young minds. And I see the twitches, body language and all of that. Imagine you're a child. Imagine you're a child. I guess we forgot hearts and protocol. But I'm sure we'll see each other again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Samantha Messer, you're next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Samantha Messer. I teach at Chase in Northside. No relation to Ryan Messer. Thank you for taking my comment. I will not take 3 minutes. I just want to ask the district to come up with a plan that addresses social distancing norms and student behavior, including how teachers should be teaching social distancing and mask procedures. How will social distancing procedures be communicated to families, parents, and teachers? And will teachers be expected to administer traditional consequences if students are not following these protocols? If so, how can we prevent issues surrounding bias from creeping into these situations? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jill Fisher, you're up next.
Hi, can you hear us?
Yes.
So this is Danny and Joe Fisher. We have 2 boys at Walnut Hills High School. So my first question is there truly, does the plan to give deference to K through 6 for the buildings, for the high school buildings, does that really have legs?
Mr. Fisher, we are going to present after the hearing of the public. We are going to share the options that are currently being offered. We generally, as a matter of practice, do not respond to questions in hearing of the public.
Okay,
So
I'm sorry.
No, it's
So
okay. Go ahead.
Well, let me just say this: we're way against that idea. 7th through 12th graders are now losing time. The K through 6 people, those kids have time to make up whatever they're going to miss or whatever going to be homeschooled for, whatever it is. These high school kids cannot make this time up and they won't get it back. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I don't know if this has ever come up, but we're willing to sign a waiver to send our children back to school. We feel that strongly about it, that we're not going to take any action against CPS or anybody else if they do happen to get ill. Something else, these are just a couple ideas that my wife had. One was using the convention center for another building because we know that was set up for a temporary hospital. So if that's not an idea that you guys have thought about, you may want to put that on the table. As well as, the Reds and the Bengals Stadium, they have indoor areas that are actually pretty large and might be able to be used by the public. And I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Geek Bush, you're up next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just going to say that I think that, I heard people saying that we need to not have police presence in the school, but I also think that that's not realistic. I also think that you can, there's not all cops are not all bad, because there's no perfect people. There's bad teachers out here. There's bad people in all walks of life and all professions. So removal of cops in the school, they're saying that's going to traumatize people. That's not traumatizing you if you're going to school, handling your business, doing what you're supposed to do at school and learning. And we have to look at the behavior of students, because of some of the behavior of students calls for those type of presence. So before we can remove that, everyone is saying get rid of the police. That's not the answer. It's about making better relations with the police and with people, because we have to face the reality. We are a public school system, Cincinnati Public, and some of the school behavior was terrible. And, it was to the point where it was unmanageable by educators. And so I think that we need to really look at that. And as far real quick about the going back to school with remote learning, I'm all for, whatever. I know everybody, it's a hard, we're kind of between a rock and a hard spot, because we do want kids to go back and learn in a normal way, because everybody is seeking normalcy. But we also have to be realistic about safety and people's health and children's health. And I think it is, it's a challenging thing, and no matter how it is going to be, everybody is not going to get what they want. But I just hope that we can come to an agreement where some things can be settled, because this is a hard mountain that we have to climb as a district. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Denise Brooks. You may start.
Good evening. I am an intervention specialist at Withrow, and I just want to talk about equity and inequity regarding all of the students, but in particular the special ed students. So we knew on March 12th, March 13th really, that we weren't going to come back to school tentatively until April 6th. I don't understand why it took us so long to get technology to the students. In addition to getting them devices, there was no provision made for them to have internet access. So I was very disappointed that with all the time that we had, because the devices really did not go out until the second week of May, we should have had something together to provide a way for our students to get access to the internet. I want to discuss also the requirement of uniforms. Everybody keeps telling me, the board wants this, the board wants this. To me, it is equivalent of the introduction to a penal institution. Children deserve to have some autonomy, and if everybody has to wear the same thing, that is no avenue for creation. And I just can't help but to think that because our population is predominantly African American, it's like a control mechanism. And so I think that you guys need to reconsider the uniform requirement. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Ellie Jones. You may go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. First of all, I want to say thank you for hosting this on Blue Jeans. My son attends Silverton. He is an autistic child. It's timely that I'm following the last speaker. He's on an IEP, and the support that we got for his in-home learning, as much as his teacher tried, and Mrs. Porzak is great, and we tried so many things, it is utter agony for him to sit at a screen for an hour a day, even if broken up, to try to learn. And he's not retaining information. Special needs children needs more work, and forcing them to either learn at home or only go into the classroom 2 days a week, that 2 days a week would mean that the teacher would just be doing classroom management for 2 days. They would have to spend all their time learning how to be in a classroom again. They would also lose their opportunity to get a hold of specials, such as computer classes or special therapies that they're getting through the school program. I know that the teachers at the school have talked about having the special needs come in 5 days a week, and I just want to add my voice to that as a parent. I think it's critically important for the students in order to be able to learn. I know we struggle just to get through the small amounts of information that Mrs. Porzak wants us to do every day, and we're not. My child in particular, and I know some of his classmates, are so tactile that the screen just isn't able to meet those learning needs. His learning style isn't being met, so he can't even move beyond just recitation of information. I do also just want to say that I only found out about today's meeting through WCPO. I wish I would have gotten an email or a text message I will admit that I'm really not good at checking Schoology, but I'm glad WCPO announced it. I wish there was a way to get it out to parents, but I do appreciate you taking this time, and I really wish that you would consider special needs students and their special needs when figuring out what your next steps are and how they have additional needs in a classroom that being physically present can only be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lainey. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Lainey Rush, and I have a daughter who is going into 10th grade, and I'm just really concerned about the students not being able to go back to school. I know that the younger kids have struggled with being, on Zoom and the screen time, and not only have the younger kids struggle, but also the older kids. And I know there were, in the past couple years, a big concern with mental health. For example, at Walnut Hills, there were several suicides, and I can't imagine that would be helped by not even seeing their peers. So I'm very worried about the mental health of the kids and their screen time, and I think the benefits of going to school far outweigh the risks. And for those who unfortunately do have family members that are at risk, or the children are at risk themselves, I think we do have the option of the online learning. While not perfect, is not great, but they do have that option. So I'm really hoping that they do go back to school. We can see their smiles. We can encourage them to be around other children and to learn. And to speak to what somebody else said about another Walnut Hills parent, about how the younger kids do have time to make up. I really feel like all the kids should go back, but especially I feel like the older kids definitely need to be in the classroom for all the learning opportunities. And what he said, yes, they will not have time to make it up. They will not have time to, in the future years, to make up what they've missed, especially if they're going to be out of school the whole next year. And it's not realistic for the children to be learning at home by themselves, especially when the parents have to work. And the younger kids will obviously have to have somebody there. So that is a huge, that's a huge issue. But with the older kids, their parents going off to work and the kids being left to their own devices, I don't think that is going to be conducive to a learning environment or great for their mental health. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you really consider that. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Lainey. Oops, sorry. Brandy Foster.
Hello, my name is Brandy Foster. I am a teacher at Aiken High School. I am also a volleyball coach there. And I just wanted to ask that when you guys I have 2 points. The first one is I ask that when you make your decisions about how students are going to go back, that you take in consideration the athletes. There has been no plan really for how athletes are to come back and how athletics is supposed to work. I did read the district plan, and there was nothing in there that specified how athletes are supposed to be governed and whether or not they'll be playing. And I want to make sure that you understand that for a lot of our students, athletics is a route to somewhere else. A lot of our students depend on athletics, not only to keep them out of trouble, but for college, for scholarships. So in your decision, I hope that you keep that in account, that we do have a lot of athletes who are yearning to play and wanting to play, and coaches who want to coach. We just need direction. So I would hope that you keep that in mind. Also, I'm in favor of wherever you guys go. Like, I want to go back to school. I wish we could do the 5 days a week. I hate sitting at home doing remote learning personally, but I mean, I understand the safety of it, but I also want to make sure that when you are taking into consideration the students, that you also think about your teachers. If students go back to school 100% and teachers get sick, there's nobody there to teach them anyway. So what are we really doing? I just want to make sure that when you make these decisions, that you take the health and safety of your teachers in account also. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is
How
Cynthia.
that sound?
Hello.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay, first I would like to say that everybody on this meeting and everybody on the school board needs to watch the documentary 13th on Netflix. America is waking up to the reality that the police, as an institution, do not protect and serve the community as a whole. They protect rich people from poor people, and more often than not, they protect white people from black people. The police are not an entity that we need in our public schools. I grew up in Cincinnati public school system, and I have no fear in saying that Cincinnati public schools are like a microcosm of ghettos. And everybody understands that when you put too many people with too few resources into too small of a community, they are going to react violently. And violence, as far as the behavior in Cincinnati public schools, is not even a fair word. This has got to change. Every single thing about Cincinnati public schools is oppressive. Not just the police, the amount of funding for arts programs and for counselors. That is going to change. That is the demand that the community is making, not just in Cincinnati, but all over the country. And it is time for you to get on board. The pressure that is being currently put on City Council to divest from the police department, reallocate that money, invest into public schools and to human services is the same pressure that's coming your way if you do not divest from having the Cincinnati Police Department in Cincinnati Public Schools and put pressure on City Council to break their contract with the Cincinnati Police Department. You deserve the funding. The students and the human beings in your schools deserve resources that they have been denied for about a century. America is changing, and Cincinnati Public Schools has a long way to go. And I very much agree with the woman who said that we need to drop the uniforms. Those uniforms are racist. Wearing those uniforms is so degrading for that. And then they cause so much problems with the teachers. Half of the disciplinary actions that I ever received as a straight man were because minor uniform infractions. All of this has to change. The police are the beginning, and you have to get them out of Cincinnati Public Schools as a first step. And I understand that that's not your intention, but these protests are only gathering momentum. They are not stopping, and that is the demand that we are making. Thank you.
Our next speaker is David Brenner. Go ahead, David.
Hello. Thank you, President Jones, members of the board, Superintendent Mitchell, and Treasurer Wagner. Thank you for the time. I've spent a lot of time at home with my students. I have 4 children in CPS, and they have definitely expressed their opinions about what they want the next school year to look like, or more specifically, what they don't want the next school year to look like. They are definitely concerned about the pandemic, for sure. We absolutely do not want 100% remote learning unless it's absolutely necessary, but I think we are all very concerned about going back entirely full time. The reality is we are going to be shut down again And we will also have students out for extended periods of time, and nobody can afford to lose that learning time. I think one of the things we need to make sure of is that everybody is used to remote learning, how communication works, all of that. So a hybrid model, in our opinion, is really the best way to go, especially because it makes sure that, you know, the technology is used, we are all in line, etc. But students need social emotional support. The things that my kids hate most is not seeing their friends. And that has been weighing on them more than anything during this entire experience. I think their mother and I are absolutely concerned about when they are in the school, and we would hope that you are adhering to CDC guidelines with at least 6-foot distancing, additional cleaning, required masks, etc. One of the plans that we did see would look at 3 feet distancing, and you may as well just leave things the way they are if you're doing that. The science supports that. And I know you guys well enough that you do follow the evidence. So thank you for your time. I know you're looking out for the best interests of our students. This last quarter, you've dealt with an unprecedented problem, and I think you've done exceptionally well. Given all things considered, there's absolutely room for improvement. But I do want to give you kudos on the things that you have gotten right this year. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Sarah Sheets. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. I am the parent of 2 CPS students, one incoming 7th grader at Walnut Hills and an incoming 10th grader. I am a strong proponent of returning to school full time in the fall, provided that proper precautions are in place and enhanced cleaning and mask wearing. Our experience from March to the end of the school year was not good, and it's my opinion, in watching my own children and talking to other parents, that it just didn't work well for teens. Like the previous speaker who talked about their mental health, I saw kids sleeping the day away, not really engaged in the work. The isolation from their friends and school community was extremely hard on them, and I worry about the long-term consequences of that. Secondly, I noticed wide discrepancies in the amount of instruction that they were being presented. In some cases, they had engagement with a teacher once a week, and that is just simply not enough. So if there is some component of distance learning, I think the board needs to set expectations, not just building by building, but district-wide on what are those expectations? What is the contact and the expectations for the delivery of instruction? Because it was just all over the place for my children. Thirdly, I think the distance learning was just really easy for the kids to opt out. They weren't getting any grades. I saw kids who were straight A, top scorers, seniors at Walnut Hills who just stopped doing the work. And that's not okay. The kids knew that they weren't getting graded, that there weren't any consequences to not participating, and so it was just easy for them not to do the work. And I just, like the other speakers, worry about them at this age falling significantly behind during a critical time in their schooling. So in my opinion, the other options fall woefully behind and short of meeting the needs of the students. So I hope there's a way we can go back full time in the fall. Thank you.
You.
Hi, did you call my name, Taquetta? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, hi, my name is Taquetta, and I'm a parent at Codell, and I'm also a parent of 4 CPS students. And I have a question on the employee aspect. I want to know, if we do shut down like for a day or two, how does that affect our work? Like, how would that all look? How will we get all our hours, and how will we be able to commute of being at work if we do 2 days out, 3 days in? And how does it look for us going back for our own kids? How safe are our kids going to be going back? Like, I need to know all that, because came March, it was like a big old windstorm. It was confusion, and I had to be a teacher for my own kids, which was not very fun most days, but we made it through. How would all that look come back August?
Okay, just, this is, I don't know if you heard the earlier comment, but typically in hearing of the public, we do not respond to questions, only because there's just not enough time to have that level of dialogue. So I can assure you, and in addition to that, it's probably legally a personnel issue. However, those are things that we are working on, just so you know that. But today, if you want to listen to the options that are going to be presented after the hearing of the public, you know, we hopefully can respond to some of your questions. Eventually, all of your questions, but tonight you will at least be able to hear what the options for returning are.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker is Elise Foster. Go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you so much for allowing the space tonight. I'm a parent of a CPS student, and I came to talk about the return to school and recognize that there are no simple solutions in any of this. We are hoping for a return to school, but more than that, I think we're really hoping for an understanding of how the board and the district is going to make database decisions. So if we do go back to school, or if we go back hybrid, how are we going to look at the incoming data, the risk that comes along with it, to make a decision to correct course? I think the decisions that we make, we can't make them for the school year. We have to make them with guidance in place that allows us to look at the data that says, when is it, if we go back full time, when do we need to pull back and go to a hybrid approach? When do we need to make those decisions? And it's not clear from any of the data that I've seen that we're taking into account the flexibility that's going to need to be required. It seems like it's going to be an all or a none approach. And that's a little bit disappointing because we have a lot of people in the district that can support making those decisions. So I think that that's really, really a critical piece of this, to make a database decision and to have some contingency plans and some criteria by which the next decision will be made, because that wasn't the case in the spring. And by no fault of the districts, it was, lots of things happening there. And I think on a related note, I've heard a couple of things about the hybrid approach and the 7th through 12th graders not going back at all. I am very strongly against that. I think particularly for our 7th graders who are going to new schools, they haven't met any of their new classmates. To try to learn in an environment completely from home, I think puts them at a severe disadvantage among many of the other concerns that were mentioned tonight. And like I said, I came to talk about school reopening, but as a new parent in this district, I'm fairly concerned about the voices around inequity in the district, and think that that is a surprise to me with the population that we have and how many concerns there are about that. I strongly support the movie 13th and think that where appropriate for age, every student in the district ought to see that. We have a problem as a country, and we have a responsibility as a district to inform and educate on the history of this country. And then the last thing that I heard tonight that I want to second as well is the communication about board meetings and about different things going on in the district is terrible. The robocall to tell me about things is way less useful than an email. If you have to robocall because people don't have email, you need to do both. And that I had to kind of find the secret pathway to get on the distribution list to find out about board meetings with the agenda is kind of frustrating. And it seems like with the technology we have in place, we could be more equitable in making things known to people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Tia. Tia or Taya?
It's Tia.
Thank you.
Hi.
You can go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Tia, and I'm the parent of one CPS student, but several nieces and nephews in CPS. First, as a law enforcement officer who used to work in the school, I believe that overall the country's going through a lot, and I think it's important, no matter how you feel about education and the capitalist society that we live in, our policing. I think it's important to actually know what CPS, what the Cincinnati Police Department, what we currently do, and how we engage the youth inside of those schools. Because if we think that the way Philadelphia does it or Minneapolis does it, if we think that we do it here in Cincinnati, it's not the case. And so we need to be understand exactly what it is that we want changed with that relationship. Because I'm a product of CPS, and I have a career because there were law enforcement officers in my school there to help me. So I understand some parents' concerns about the issue, but I think we need to make sure we become very specific in terms of what we want to see with police and community relations regarding our students, because our youth services section, they do so much more aside from enforcing discipline in schools. They offer so many more opportunities that extend beyond that. So I want to just talk about policing in schools. And then the other part that I just found difficulty, I'm an educator, an adult educator, and being a disciplinarian and a teacher to my son was hard. I don't know how to teach kids, and just sitting him in front of a computer screen, it was very challenging and difficult. So I don't know if the hybrid approach may have been offering more than one solution. We're in a changing time, and I understand the importance of having standardized type of learning so you can have standardized evaluation, but maybe we can move toward taking a hybrid approach and offering, asking parents, hey, if you would like your child to go full-time, you have this option at this particular school. If you feel better with 2 and 3 days a week, then you have that option. I'm all on board with signing a waiver that if he falls ill or if something even worse happens, that I ask him to go back to school, because like the lady who's also a teacher said, she's having difficulties being a teacher and raising her kids. I'm having difficulty just being a disciplinarian and a teacher. And in my opinion, I think it's either going to fall behind. While I have the means to privatize his education, I realize that a lot of kids in CPS don't have that opportunity. So I can't speak for them, but I think that the people who don't know about this call or who are working, who are struggling, need to have a voice and an opportunity to share their concerns as well. My sister being one of them, just raising 5 kids that they can't go to school full time. It hurts the kids, it hurts the family, it hurts the community, because they're still coming in contact with the police because they're out doing, whatever during school hours if they're not engaged in school. The other thing, lastly, I don't know if CPS has considered partnering with some child care facilities who are willing to help fill in the gaps for students who aren't going to school but 2 to 3 days a week. So maybe that's an opportunity or an option. And lastly, the robocalls. Yes, it would be better if if we just made it more known that these meetings were actually happening, because I had to receive a text message from several teachers who I know in the district to tell me that this was here. My passion, like I said, I'm a police officer, so I don't speak for Cincinnati Police Department. I want to make that very clear. However, as a person who grew up in CPS, love my school resource officer, worked in the schools as a fill-in SRO, it's not, we need to make sure we know what it is that we want to see change before we just say remove it altogether, because Cincinnati Police we have done the work to make sure we do what's right by our children and our students. And so that is all I have to offer, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Jeff Irvin.
Hey,
Go ahead.
here you go. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, yes, thank you. My name is Jeff Irvin. I teach at Woodward High School. My question is, I have family in different cities, different states, who also are teachers. And I'm curious with the what you've decided to do or what you're looking at? Have you looked at other districts, other state schools, and compare to what's going on with that?
Mr.
Thank you.
Irvin, thank you, Mr. Irvin. Hearing of the public, it is pretty standard that we don't respond to questions because we just don't have the time. This is your opportunity to express your concerns to us. After this hearing of the public, we will go into a presentation about the options that are being provided for consideration. So if you could just be patient with us and listen in to that, that might help address some of your questions.
All right, thank you. Well, then, what I'm, I guess, hoping that if you haven't made your decisions, that you all do take a look at other districts and other schools and see how they're working, such as A and B days and whatnot.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Sharon with no last name. Go ahead, Sharon. Oops, I meant. Go ahead, Sharon. Sharon, are you there? Okay, we're going to move to the next person, Lexi Lopez. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Lexi Lopez Mayo. I am a speech pathologist. I was previously at AMI and LEAP, and I will be the speech pathologist at Clark Montessori this coming school year. And I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you for hearing us. And I want to express my concern on behalf of related services. I've been with the district for several years, and I'm PTOT speech, we often joke around that we fall by the wayside, like we're the redheaded stepchild, like people don't look at what we're doing or what we need with the same kind of priority as perhaps other departments. And so, although I would love to go back to the way things were 5 days a week, where we're seeing the kids, there's a huge concern within my colleagues in the speech department, and we've created a blended learning focus group about our own personal safety as well as the kids. A lot of us work in empty classrooms with kids with a lot of special needs who can't regulate themselves, and you can't reason with them as far as wearing PPE and not spitting, not biting, keeping social distance. So I would urge you to think about that when you make a decision on your on how blended learning is going to look for us, not just related services, but district-wide. But I would also like to say that this past spring was absolutely horrendous as far as providing services to kids. First and foremost, we did not have a proper platform as far as a speech pathologist is concerned. We need the proper certification for telehealth. We obviously can't bill if we don't have that certification, rather than having these teacher PDs that don't really apply to us. And we really don't have an interactive platform. Unfortunately, Google Meet, which is what we were told to use, is not an interactive platform to provide proper telehealth speech therapy services to our students. So these are there's many other issues, but these are primarily the issues that I would like to bring forth to you, is to really think about, we have so many kids, who have IEPs, who receive PT, speech, OT, and intervention specialists. And if we are having remote learning for the upcoming school year, which looking at the numbers of cases and the way they're rising, it looks like we will not have traditional 5-day week. We just need a proper platform of how to provide these services to the kids. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Lori Cooper.
Hello, my name is Lori Cooper, and I have been a teacher within the district for 17 years. And I'm also a parent of an incoming 7th grader at Walnut Hills High School. And the transition for him to go from elementary to high school is something that is already nerve-wracking enough, let alone when he may be entering and have not been able to build a relationship with any of his teachers, meet anyone else. Previously, he has not attended Cincinnati Public Schools, so he is going into the situation blind without knowing anyone. So I would like to advocate for the blended learning model. I am, as a teacher and as a parent both, having seen what my children have experienced as far as being in isolation. They need to be able to interact with their peers. My kids have everything that they could possibly want, and they have a teacher at home who can teach them the content, and they've still really, really struggled. When I was teaching at West High or Pleasant Hill, my kids didn't have the same resources. And when I think about all that they're going through or, could be struggling with, it makes me sad for them, because they need the teachers for the role models. They need to be able to interact with their peers. They need some normalcy. And I think that that's very important for us to consider. I don't feel that it is fair, or to use the term that a lot of us have been using tonight, equitable, for the K-6 students to be able to be in the buildings and to forget about the 7th to 12th graders. When you are in 7th and 8th grade, which is where I've spent the majority of my time, idle time becomes problematic. When you have a 12, 13, 14-year-old child that has all day is free time, especially if their parents are working, they're probably going to get into some things that they shouldn't be doing. So again, that to me is just like a very big flag. But also, if we have so many different parents who struggle, and I remember seeing the 3rd grade Common Core math myself and being like, okay, this is new, this is different. How are we going to, as parents, especially the ones who aren't educators, be able to teach our children trigonometry, algebra 2? How are we going to provide them with the hands-on science experiments? How are we going to do any of that? So I feel that it's only fair if everybody has a bit of time in the classroom and that they are able to meet with their parents. This year I was an instructional coach, and I will be next year also. And to me, it kind of goes like stations. The beginning of the week or whatever day you see your teacher, you get that FaceTime, you get to learn things, you get to be able to have the different components that you need. And then the rest of the time, it's kind of like even stations in the class. But now we're doing our simulations at home, or we're doing some practice work at home, those things that we can do without the teacher standing there guiding us. So again, I think that when we say the word hybrid, many of us think blended. That's my feeling, that people are thinking, oh, it's a little bit of everything. But knowing that hybrid means that 7th graders, 7th through 12th graders are, yes.
Cooper, your
Yes,
time
ma'am.
is up. If you could please finish your thought.
Thank
Your
you.
3 minutes are up, but if you could finish your thought, please
Thank
do
you.
so.
So I would just advocate for blended and keep everybody in school part of the time. That is my biggest and greatest thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wagner, before you call the next person, I'm going to insert these comments. We have had 982 people. We have many, many more people in the queue waiting to be heard. And I promise you, we're going to have everybody have an opportunity. But I do want to ask people to please, one of the things, a lot of what we're hearing are things that if you could wait until you hear the options, you would at least have the knowledge. But again, we want to hear your comments. They're very important to us. But I just asked in the because of the time that If you just please be sensitive to that, so that we can get through all of the people, and then we can move on to doing the presentation on the options that are being considered. So let's move on, and we will hear everybody.
Okay, Rodney, you're next. Go ahead.
Yes, this is Rodney Lemuel. I have a son that's going into Walnut Hills in 7th grade this year, and I know this is a difficult decision to decide what the kids are going to do. Whatever decision you make, you're not going to make everyone happy. So we just have to, as parents, do the best we can to try to adapt to whatever decision, because the corona virus cases have increased since we've opened up places, and people are just not wearing masks. They're being just reckless. And I think whatever decision you guys are going to make, I trust that you're going to make the right one. And thank you guys for being listening to everyone. I know it's hard to listen to everybody's opinions. You're not going to make everyone happy, but just do the best job you can to make the right decision for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Letty Reed, you're up next.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to share there was a young lady by the name of Cynthia who spoke against having police officer in the school building. And, you know, I've spent 11 years in Cincinnati Public School as a substitute teacher going into my 12th year. And I, not only Cynthia, but I really want to share with the parents that it is really absolutely necessary to have police officers in the school building. Not all the schools have officers. We have more like, well, I guess the resource officer are the same thing. But I just want them to understand it's necessary, because we have students that get themselves in a position where they have to be removed if necessary. We do everything that we can to calm the student down when they get upset, throw temper tantrum, but sometimes it's necessary to have the student to be removed, and we need a police officer to intervene because teachers cannot do it. I mean, even the principal, if the principal call the resource officer to come and intervene to diffuse the problem that a student may have, then let's say we have 2 other students that's having issues. The principal cannot be at 3 places at one time. Then in most cases, we have only 2 police officers in the school buildings. So they have to be able to assist the principal when it's necessary. I do not agree to have any officer removed from the school building. I just don't. I've been there a long time. I've seen students in action where they have literally become a liability to all of us. And I've been to several schools around the district. I've seen it with my own eyes. I know what the needs are. And I just want to encourage the parents, please understand, we want police officers to be empathetic, and we want them to be sympathetic to our students' problems, whatever that may be. But here's what's important. We need parents to get involved, to be involved with their children, because a lot of the problems that we
Ms. Reed,
with the kids, yes. Do I have
Ms. Reed, you are at your time limit. You can finish your thought.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I just want to encourage the parents. Please give us some time to sort things out, because there's a lot that's going on. I know Superintendent Loris Mitchell is doing the best she can. And trust me, we are working on it. Just give them some time, let them sort things out, because this is all new to us considering with the COVID-19. So we're doing the best we can.
I'm sorry, but I
All
have
right,
to
thank
cut
you.
you off.
Thanks, Ms.
Thank
Jones.
you. We
Okay.
appreciate it. Thanks.
All right.
Okay, Mary Bueller, you're next.
Thank you. Thank you for this time, and thank you for the work that you guys do on the board. I am a CPS parent and a teacher of fourth grade at Covedale. My concern as a fourth grade teacher is that I see 3 groups of students. So during normal times, I would see approximately 90 kids in a day, whereas K through 3 might have one self-inclusive classroom. So I'm just hoping that while you're coming up with a plan, you keep in mind that as it is now, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade teachers probably see maybe 3 times the amount of students that a K through 3 teacher would see during the day. I support voices that want to see fewer security officers in the schools. I don't know what the answer is as far as that, but I would like to see maybe a different kind of crisis intervention team, because when we have kids acting out in the classroom, they are in crisis. And I'm not sure the proper thing to do when a student is in crisis is to call security. So whether that's social workers, more counselors, more therapists in the school, I'd like to see that. And I'd also like to see maybe social emotional learning as a special, along with arts and physical education. And that's all of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lydia Bowers, you're up next. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lydia Bowers. I have 2 kids in Cincinnati Public Schools. There's one. One at Gamble Montessori High School, and the other that was at the new Gamble Montessori Elementary. One thing that we love about Cincinnati Public Schools is that it's not one size fits all. It's a very diverse district, and there are many options for schooling. And I think that's something we have to keep in mind as we look forward, that there is not one size fits all solution to this. There's been lots of concerns about how things happened in the spring. I think that I hope people understand that nobody is asking for a repeat of that. That was completely, faced with a completely unknown thing, and that distance learning isn't going to look the same in the fall as it did in the spring. And I hope people recognize that, because I'm sure all of you on the school board are fully aware of that and know that that needs to be different. Social and emotional learning is absolutely something that we have to take into consideration, and it's very important. But again, that's going to look different for different children. For some children, the best place for them to get that social and emotional interaction is at school in person, whether that's because they are dealing with more loneliness and the loss of those friends, or maybe a home situation is unsafe, or maybe they need to be in school because their parents have to work, and without that, they're facing much worse situations. For other children, though, the social distancing that will be required is its own level of trauma. I know several times what was mentioned, uniforms being very prison-like. When you have 5 and 6-year-olds that can see their friends but have to stay 6 feet apart, that are not allowed to play together on a playground, that have to have those masks, those things are necessary, but that also causes its level of trauma. So I hope that we'll be able to see some options where even within schools, parents can sort of opt in and opt out for what's going to make sense for their child, what will be best for everybody. I know how my 6-year-old picks his nose and doesn't want to wash his hands. And those young children, although getting them in front of a teacher is important, their health and safety issues are going to be much more challenging. And I know that's something where for us, we will not send our 6-year-old back into a classroom this fall. So I hope that there will be options for parents, because one thing is not going to work for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Kelly Egan. Go ahead.
Hi, I am a teacher at Kilgore,
And I want to, although it was a struggle to transition to online last spring, I think that the easiest part was that we had built those connections with the students, and so we were able to not only kind of know what their needs were, that made it a little bit easier when we transitioned into the online learning, especially for the primary grades, that it's very important for us to be able to be in front of them and to meet them and get to know them. I feel like when you know someone, you are going to work better and be able to feel comfortable asking questions and stuff, as opposed to if you started off online. With that being said, I did teach a class last week at a camp, and I did that specifically so I would kind of know what the problems that we may encounter, and masks being left in the bathroom, being left on the table, and then eventually on the floor were a problem. So that's just something that we will have to figure out and have solutions for when they do come in and to meet. And of course, it is very hard for the students to socially distance themselves. And the final thing I'd like to say is that I do appreciate all of the technology that has been rolled out for us teachers to learn and to work on over the summer, because there's a lot of us that may be a little bit older and not have had some of that technology. And so I do think Cincinnati Public is doing a very nice job with the educator certification program. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kirsten with no last name. Go ahead, Kirsten.
Hi, thank you again for your time, your hard work. I want to acknowledge that every single one of us is between a rock and a hard place here. I understand the situation that we're all in. But I want to say that if the plan that you guys come up with does not serve every single student in the district, you haven't been creative enough. Creativity has to be our best friend here. Yes, our students, so I'm a parent of an incoming kindergartner, so I'm new to this. And yes, our kids' physical health and our teachers' physical health is obviously a priority, but if their mental health is not a priority, this plan will fail our students, this plan will fail our teachers, this plan will fail our parents. There are 1,000 people on this call. Any single one of us will do whatever is necessary to help this plan succeed for every single student. If physical space is the issue, let's ask the city for help. I loved the guy who said, let's go to the convention center, let's go to the Red Stadium. There are offices downtown that are shut down. They've got all their people working from home. They're grown-ass people. They can do that at home. Excuse my language. They can do that at home. Our students need to be together. They need their peer support. They need their teacher support. Mental health, yes, if our children get sick, that's a huge priority. I'm not discounting that. But if we don't address their mental health with a village, we've always said it takes a village to raise a kid. If we don't supply that village, that will have consequences for years to come, just like if their physical health is affected. I'm not an expert. I don't know how to solve this, but I know that creativity has to be the answer. If we have 3 options, be at school sometimes, and be at home behind a screen, that's not creativity to me. I am looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say. Ms. Jones, I hear you're asking us to be patient and wait for the plans. This is my first school board meeting. I don't know if it might be more efficient to present the plan to us and then ask for public comment after. Because again, I apologize if I'm addressing things that are going to be addressed, but I have no way of knowing that. So I don't know if that's something to consider in the future. Thank you again for your time and your hard work.
Thank you.
Your next speaker is Caitlin Taylor. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Hi there. Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hi there. My name is Caitlin Taylor, and I am an intervention specialist in CPS First of all, I just want to shout out all of the teachers and students tonight lifting their voice and sharing their courage. I want to speak to the board's statement on June 2nd following the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery. In that statement, the board recommitted to their equity policy and specifically recommitted to decreasing racial disparities in students with disabilities identification in CPS. I just want to say I look forward to the action steps regarding this aspect of the equity policy heading into the 2021 school year. I look forward to how the district commits to this work, as I believe it is a critical pillar to our anti-racist work for our students, specifically our students with disabilities and their families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next caller is Sharon. Sharon, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to say that Cincinnati, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Cincinnati
Yes.
Digital Academy is not a good option for kids who can't return to school because of their health or their family's health. I have two high school students in the district. One just took a couple of summer school classes that were moved to CDA because of the shutdown. CDA is teach yourself by reading a bunch of lessons and taking tests. That will not work for a lot of kids. If you've got kids who have different learning styles or many other issues, CDA is not a good option. Great for some kids, but not for many. I think there needs to be a streaming option from the classrooms with access to streaming provided for all the families that need it for the sake of equity. The people who've said not one size fits all isn't going to work here are correct, but CDA is not a good one size fits all for those who can't be in the classroom. Streaming lets the kids interact to some extent with their peers and with their teachers. The teachers can get to know them. It's a way to let the kids be in the classroom without physically being there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Moffitt. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak. And as you know, I've said before, and I will say it 100 times, I am so grateful for the work that you're doing and everything that you have going on and the work that you put in. I just want to make 3 suggestions, if I can. The first one is, since we have an opportunity to really think out the box, then perhaps we can think out the box on a lot of different things that we have an opportunity to do better at. The first one, it's more of a question, but since we are talking about flexibility of days, do we also have the ability to have flexibility of the timing of the day? So for parents that work first shift or second shift, is it possible that we would maybe offer some classes during a second shift hour so that students, A, don't have to get up so early, because we did have the later start times for high school students, but then also we would have the ability for maybe not to have all the kids in the classroom in a first shift setting, but maybe in a second shift incorporating that too. Is it possible with teachers to be able to offer some evening classroom hours for students and parents? The streaming was another option that I was going to share that the previous speaker spoke about, being able to have students sitting in a classroom and then streaming that through one of the popular streaming services. And the last thing that I want to say, that I say quite often to you all, and I really want to say this again, since we have an opportunity to do things differently, can we engage with our kids regularly so that we know before it becomes a problem that there are problems with parents and with kids? Can we send out some sort of check-in survey with the kids every 2 weeks, be it Schoology, be it phone, be it some sort of quantitative survey? But we need to know that what their temperament is regularly, not just once a quarter. 10 weeks is too long. We need to know if they're not getting their services We need to know if maybe something's not working on a regular basis. So since we have an opportunity to think out the box, can we start implementing out the box check-ins with our students and our families on a regular basis so that they have some connectivity to the district, to the leadership, and they can let us know when things are not working timely so that we don't have a long span to be able to get those things rectified. Again, I thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'm willing to help. I say that all the time. I'm willing to help in anything that I mention and anything that's needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, excuse me, our next speaker is Hannah. Go ahead, Hannah.
11.
Hannah, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I just want to tell all the teachers thank you for their wonderful work, especially April and May. I have two students that go to AWL, but my biggest concern is the transportation part. Even you, like some of the other people were saying, no matter what we choose, it's not going to work for everyone. But the biggest problem and the bottom line is the transportation, regardless of what we choose, besides all online, because the children, they already have a hard time following basic rules. And not only that, there's a driver shortage every year amongst all the vendors. So that's going to be the biggest issue, especially if you go to 5 days a week. How are we going to get those students safely to and from school every day? So that was my only thing. But I also wanted to commend all the teachers and saying thank you. I had a whole bunch of support, I know alone at AWL. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Shubra. Go ahead. Shubra, are you there? Okay, we'll move on to the next speaker. That would be Ms. Sellers. Go ahead, Ms. Sellers.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I would just like to say good evening to the members of the board, the superintendent and treasurer. And I was so hoping that we could have a meeting that was live in person. But with this format, we were able to have nearly 1,000 people online. And I just want to thank the board for how respectful they have been throughout this meeting in comparison to how we witnessed the meeting with the city last week. And Carolyn, I want to thank you for how you have facilitated. I think you've done a great job listening to everyone and making sure that everyone's voices are heard. I also want to say that I think that the CPS Outside programming is a great opportunity for our students, especially for any after school learning. But I would also, CFT and our members are still anxiously waiting to hear details from the district concerning the plans to reopen. This past Friday, I just want to let you know that Kendra and we met with the leadership team for 2 hours. And they did ask us many questions, and they gave us very few answers. And hopefully those answers will be addressed in the plan this evening. We did ask about the calendar option to begin after Labor Day and the purpose. But we want to know, how will this impact instructional days with how we count those days through EMIS for both students and teachers? And we would like to ask how virtual learning is going to work. Students do not want to have to enroll in Digital Academy. They don't want to have to unenroll in their home school where they currently are. And there are, we don't know if there's a plan for how this is going to work. And that is really going to come down to very clear and concrete conversations and communication and some commitments from what these different types of learning are going to look like. You cannot allow families and students to select remote learning, but then not have the commitment that their family and their children will be fully committed to that type of learning. We want to make sure that students don't fall behind. We feel that there are many aspects that should be included in the plan and many options that will be needed in order to accommodate different programmings and different students and family needs and student needs. And so I hope that whatever plan you have has flexibility, that students who have special needs, students who are ELL learners, who are have WEP plans, that those students will be able to receive the services that they need on top of their general education. As many of you have read today, Mason's plan includes just 3 feet of social distancing, and in Mason alone, 20% of their students' families have selected to a remote option, and they selected to opt out. As CPS goes with a 3-foot plan, that could be over 7,000 students. And how would this type of plan work? I know that many teachers also have medical needs, and we want to make sure that there is an option for those teachers to stay productively involved as a teacher so that they can also have contribute to the student learning as we move through this next year. And hopefully this type of learning is only going to be 1 year. But the toughest part of the plan is what teachers will also need in order to work remotely. How will this option work, and what is going to be communicated, and when will it be communicated to teachers? We feel like there's been a real lack of communication, and it's causing great trepidation for teachers. And all of the committees that we have been involved with have mostly just been brainstorming ideas, and no one has really been part of the development of the plan. And so we're very anxiously waiting to see what those plans look like. We need answers so that everyone can be on the same page, and that we can ensure that there is great transparency, not just for teachers and employees, but also for parents and students, and that we must all work collaboratively with the district so that we can have the best plan for all students and all employees. My goal is that there will be every teacher, every student will be able to come to school and remain safe and healthy. What I saw happen in New York City and where there were large spikes, it was very concerning, and it was too little too late. In New York City alone, over 65 teachers in 1 month died of COVID. And we want to make sure that our teachers are all protected and safe. And we also want to make that sure all students are protected and safe. After this meeting, and when you present the plan, we would like to know what the process will be for CFT or the public to have input into that plan. And that we hope that when you vote on it, there's plenty of time for public input to that plan. And we know that we can't make everyone happy, but we also know that there has to be a variety of options in order to meet the needs of everyone. This will cost money, And I think that we need to make sure that every single family in our district contacts their legislators at the federal level to make sure that we get those care dollars so that our school will have the resources necessary in order to have a successful school year. My concern is that we keep everything as safe as possible, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so here's where we are right now. Typically, when Ms. Sellers, I just want to say to those in the public, Ms. Sellers' time limit of 3 minutes was waived because she is our CFT president, and by contractual agreement, she does not have the 3 minute limit. Now, and typically we take her last, but during her comments, we had 4 people pop up. So here's what we're going to do, because we have to continue with the meeting. So we're going to take these 4 and then we're going to cut it off. Okay. And you know, if we have to figure out a way next time to incorporate this so that everybody can be heard, we can. But we have to cut it off at some point. So let's take these last 4 and then we'll move on.
Okay, Zen, somebody named Zen, you're up.
This is she. Thank you guys for allowing us to have this time. I teach middle school English at Gilbert A. Dater High School, and I'm also the Human Rights Committee Chair for Cincinnati Federation of Teachers. I have 3 points. I am pushing for equity amongst the technology that was rolled out to our students for this upcoming year. Technology was rolled out with different images according to what school students were at, which also meant different applications were pushed out on those tablets for different schools. And so that in itself is creating an inequity of resources for academics regarding our students across different schools. So I would hope that we can look at adjusting that. That's something little that might make a big difference. I also want to remind folks that pulling cops out of our schools, the CPD, doesn't necessarily mean that we have nothing left then. I would like to liken it to defunding the police in the Black Lives Matter movement in regards to it is simply a reallocation of funding. And so though the amount of money that we have tied up with CPD right now doesn't necessarily have to be completely rebudgeted elsewhere, I would like to see that there's more resources regarding counselors, psychologists, social justice counselors within our schools, not social justice, restorative justice, my bad. And then the last thing I would like to say is that I'm really hoping that the board will make the option for our high school students 7 through 12 to be in school just the same as elementary if possible. Just because the students are older does not mean that they deserve less access to in-person education. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Piper Johnson, you're up.
Hi, I'm Piper. I'm a recent graduate of CPS, and I just wanted to thank you guys for everything you're talking about with COVID-19 and how to reopen safely. Like we all appreciate the work that you're doing, and it's an incredibly hard decision to make. But I wanted to talk about a few things regarding the student resource officers, kind of the same points that the last woman was making. I didn't catch your name, but essentially, as someone who's been in, I went to Walnut for 6 years, and I've been active in the community in the schools. Having a student resource officer present manufactures an environment that expects students to be aggressors, rather than like putting our resources into the community and the programs that would change that in the first place. And again, I think the woman before me made a point about restorative justice in schools, which is something that isn't really implemented in our CPS schools, and I think should be. And I don't know a lot of the details on that, but the two things that I would encourage and asking for more resources, if we can get them to be allocated to, is like first and foremost therapy and like actual counseling for the students, because I know that Walnut has a reputation for not supporting students in that regard, and they've tried. I think we have like 1.5 counselors right now, but they haven't been available for the students for the most part, and they aren't available for those who don't have healthcare that cover it, which is essentially just like perpetuating the cycle of I guess people who can't afford it can't get therapy and can't do better in school. Like, I know that I would have done much better if I had resources like that. And I know my experience in CPS was just changed completely by our after school programs and our educational or curricular activities. So I was involved in theater and many different things. And I had that opportunity because Walnut has the funding and the resources for it from our alumni foundation, but other schools in CPS do not have as much as Walnut does. And so that it needs to be more of a priority than having cops in schools. That's all I had to say. Thank you for listening and for all that you do.
Thank you.
Okay, and our last speaker is Maggie Nelson. Go ahead, Maggie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I am a preschool teacher at Leap Academy, and I also am the parent of a preschooler at Pleasant Ridge. And I would just like to ask that there's a lot of talk about K and up, and I would just like to ask that when we're informing the public and the staff about the plans, that we also include the plan for preschool reopening, which will probably look a little different, just so that our families and staff are also aware of how our reopening may be different to that of the rest of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're at the end of hearing of the public. I first want to thank all of the attendees for your comments, for being patient, and for listening in. Typically, we don't respond in hearing of the public, but let me just say this. We're trying to do the best that we can do to open up the schools safely, in a healthy environment. And we're talking about 37 students and families and 6,000 employees. So it is a challenge, and we didn't ask for this. So things were unforeseen. So what we're going to move on to is a presentation of what we're offering now, what the options are. I think I speak on behalf of the board in saying we still have lots of considerations. We still have lots of things that we need to figure out. So the plan is not definite. It will get there, but at least this will give you some idea of where we are. So having said that, I'm going to turn it over to our superintendent and ask her to do the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, President Jones. So we are excited tonight to be able to bring to you some additional considerations as we think about the opening for the upcoming school year. And so I'm going to ask Sarah Trimble Oliver to launch the PowerPoint presentation. And you should be seeing it momentarily.
Can you see it?
No, not yet.
Okay, let me try it again.
Thank you, Sarah. So tonight's presentation is framing up the upcoming school year. and is a follow-up to the last presentation that we made to the board, which included several considerations. And since we last met with the board, we also met with the STEP committee, which is the strategic planning committee, as well as the union president, as well as specifically, in addition to all the union presidents together, the teachers union president, and talked through some ideas that you'll see represented on the considerations for today. So Sarah's getting the PowerPoint ready.
I'm going to have to ask my backup, Krista, to jump in. Krista, okay. Can you jump in? Okay. Yep, I'll give it a whirl. One moment.
Okay. Times like this make me long for the overhead projector and transparencies, where you can make changes right on the screen as long as your bulb worked. So hopefully they'll pull it up just a moment. If not, I can definitely talk through, but the visuals help make it a lot more interesting.
Well, is that?
No.
No.
No, so it should say future of schools.
There we go.
There we go. All right, who's guiding me, Sarah or Krista?
Krista.
All right, Krista, next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So you may know that the board launched a new strategic plan last school year, last August. And there were some major goals that the board wanted to make sure that we were really focused on. And there were 5 major areas. When I think about the future of Cincinnati Public and the future of schools for our district, now is the time for us to be able to disrupt the system, as it has been done already, to really think about educating our kids differently and what the work environment looks like for our staff members. So if there are 3 key messages that we want you to take away from this presentation today, this is about safety and health. So we want to ensure that everyone who enters our schools are safe and they are healthy, emotionally, physically, intellectually. We want to ensure the health and safety, and that's one of the major goals for the board. Another area is student learning in terms of accelerating student learning. So if you think about last school year, when our system was disrupted in the spring by COVID-19, there was the opportunity for our kids to actually lose some ground. And so what we need to do is think about a system in which we can jumpstart their learning and actually accelerate what they're learning in school. And so that's really critically important as we think about the board's goal that is centered around student-centered decision-making. So when I think about all of these things, before I begin the last message, which is on equity, when I think about all of these things, it really reminds me of the fact that we are living through a time that no one else that we know of has lived through. So just imagine that we're in a worldwide pandemic, as well as racial disparities and inequities, which are being brought to the surface all at the same time. And so I say all that to say it's the perfect opportunity for us to rebuild our system and think about our work very differently. When I think about those 2 big areas, a pandemic, COVID-19, and racial disparities or inequities, it is a very complex issue to deal with. And I believe that the solution that is needed needs to be as comprehensive as our experience has been complex. So as I also reflect on what took place in the spring in terms of our school closure, that wasn't something that we anticipated happening ever in our lifetime to the degree in which it had to happen. And I can empathize with parents who are at home, who are working from home, who are having to go to work and still trying to make sure that their child was being educated. I was in that exact same spot as a grandparent who is raising a 10-year-old in CPS. I was working with her, trying to make sure she got on her Google Meet sessions, while I was also running video conference calls to make sure that we had food hubs that were open. And it was really hard. And I come to this with an education background. So parents, I understand how hard and how difficult this really was for you to experience. In addition, I empathize with our staff members. There are many staff members who've written me emails. I'm of an age where people are actually getting this disease and they're dying from this. I have conditions and health concerns that put me in a high risk category. What are you going to do to ensure my safety in school? And so I empathize with both our parents and also our staff, and don't believe that really their thoughts are at odds with each other. Which now brings me to the third key message, which is equity. So we have heard you loud and clear regarding some inequities that are within our district, and we are committed to, first of all, looking at the data, uncovering those things that are causing a system to be inequitable, and then to make some changes very quickly to change what is in our system that doesn't serve us well. And you're right, you're absolutely correct in terms of what you said tonight. One size fits all won't work. And so we have to have lots of different options to be able to explore that provides equity for everyone. And equity doesn't mean everyone gets the same thing. It won't be a one size fits all. We have to look creatively, as someone has already said, about the opportunities that we explore. And so thinking about those opportunities, I do want to emphasize this. We have explored many of the things that were mentioned tonight, so I feel really affirmed by your ideas and thoughts. We already called the convention center and looked for space. We've also contacted the museum center and the Freedom Center and the Bengals and the Reds. And so these are all places that we've contacted and many more to see if there's the opportunity for us to be able to creatively use their space to serve our students. In many instances, the spaces are not available, that they're using themselves. And so the Bengals and the Reds have come back and said, we have our plans for our own space. There is space at the Freedom Center. It's very limited space, as well as the Museum Center. And the Convention Center has more space, but again, it's limited compared to the number of students we need to be able to serve. So I'm not saying all of those things to say that we've come into a dead end. I'm saying that we've explored them and will continue to look for additional options to better be able to serve our young people. Next slide, please. So it was really great to be able to hear all of the different voices this evening. Your ideas and thoughts about the way that we could do things differently. This information that you've given us tonight is in addition to a survey that we launched quite some time ago, in which we had 6,000 participants participate. And of course, we want a lot more, and so we're going to do more survey. And so we were able to see what our parents wanted, what our employees wanted, and what our students and communities want. And so you can see their areas of concerns are really centered around academic achievement and moving forward, and the social and emotional support that our young people need during remote learning. But also this balance of being able to come back into a physical building, but in a very safe way. Next slide, please. So since we last met and since we launched that survey, we also met with the board's strategic planning committee. And we were able to get some very good ideas from them, things centered around parent training and a hotline for parents who need additional information on the use of technology. Having building subs that are assigned to our schools so that when, and it's not if, but when there is a confirmed COVID case, we can put people in to be able to stand in as subs and continue the learning. Setting really clear expectations for our students, for our families, and also for our staff members. And then, like so many of you all mentioned tonight, making sure that we have some transition services in place for our 7th graders from 6th grade to 7th grade, however the model looks. And then I don't think that we could possibly say enough about the communication that needs to happen. And so there is a plan to do a lot more communicating, especially once the board has decided on a model in which we will follow for the upcoming school year. So now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Sarah Trimble Oliver. She is our Chief Strategy Officer, and she's going to talk about this from a safety perspective. Thank you, Sarah.
Yes, good evening. So these are the 31 Considerations for Schools that is published by the Centers for Disease Control. And we reviewed these in detail at the last board meeting. So just to briefly recap for those since we have so many more attendees tonight, the CDC is recommending masks for everyone, sanitizer and disinfectant in every classroom, staggered schedules, extra building ventilation, backup staffing plans, and isolation procedures if a short-term closure is necessary in a certain building. These are not at this time mandates or requirements, but they're considerations for how we can open schools in the most safest manner possible. Many of these health and safety protocols that you see on the slide here, especially the ones identified in yellow, will require additional costs for the district. We have plans that have already done for 30 of the 31 precautions listed here. One item in particular that you see in red, modified layouts, suggests that we maintain the social distancing to the extent feasible in classrooms and on buses. And this represents one of our biggest challenges. On the next slide, I want to mention that in learning how to apply these 31 safety precautions to CPS, we're very fortunate to have Children's Hospital providing us with input on how to reopen safely. Krista, just waiting for the next slide. There we go. Okay. So Children's Hospital is not only giving us insightful perspective from the medical field, but also they're a large organization that has already gone through reopening their services and their facilities. And so we are learning from them on how to do this most safely. For example, we have a design session, an all-day design session that is scheduled at South Avondale Elementary next week. And that's going to combine a team of experts from Children's with a team of stakeholders from CPS so that we can begin building our strategies for those 31 safety precautions. So we're moving on to the next slide. As we're making these very hard decisions about opening school, we have adopted these 5 guiding principles. And these are based on all of the discussion and feedback from the last board meeting on June 10th, as well as the community survey. So first, we really want to balance the health and safety of the adults and the children with as much in-person classroom time as possible. And this is a difficult and a delicate balance, and we know it will require trade-offs. We're also keeping a close eye on equity so that we can make equitable decisions. The data from around the nation shows that families of color are more likely to be negatively impacted by both the COVID pandemic and the effects of remote learning. We will also use data to guide decision making. The data on this changes very quickly. We are on a daily basis getting updates from the CDC, the health department, the governor's office, the Council of Great City Schools, the Ohio Urban 8 districts, and other neighboring districts in Ohio. So we have to stay very closely connected and keeping up with this rapidly changing data. And lastly, the reality of reopening schools is that we are incurring significant additional costs to implement all of these safety precautions, while at the same time seeing funding reductions from the state. And so any plan for reopening must account for these financial considerations. What you'll see on the next slide, you may remember this visual if you saw the last board meeting, but this is a visual showing both the academic risks and the COVID-19 health risks for each of the previously presented reopening options. Each option does have difficult trade-offs. I'm waiting for the slides to catch up. When you see the, there we go, when you see the risks coded from green is low risk and red is high risk, and you're seeing the academic risk on the left-hand side and the safety risk on the right-hand side. What you will see is that none of them have both low academic risk and low health risk. So for example, the option to return full-time 5 days a week for everyone is a high safety risk if there are no safety precautions, none of the 31. But as you add more and more of those safety precautions from the list, your risk dot is moving from the high end more towards the medium end. So just like every other organization that is reopening, we must find the right balance. So on the next slide, you will see that based on all of the input that we have had from the community survey, thought exchange, and the board discussions, the step meeting last week that Laura mentioned, the decisions that are coming out from other Ohio districts, and our new guiding principles. We do believe that 2 of the previously presented options are not models that strike the right balance. And those are the remote learning option and the hybrid option. The hybrid option, you might remember, is the one where high schoolers were on full remote learning. So we don't believe those 2 options do strike the right balance. So tonight, for further consideration, Ms. Amat will be presenting 3 variations of blended learning and 2 variations of full face-to-face learning. Passing it on to Tiane. Tiane, are you there?
I'm starting to wonder if she got kicked off of the call.
There. Sorry. I was
There
on
she is.
mute. Thank you, Sarah. On to our options. Our first option is under blended learning, 6 feet of social distancing. And under this model, we have 3 variations. So I'll start with the first one. And it permits all students receiving a minimum of 2 days a week in person. So we gave you a sample schedule. Half of the class would attend Monday and Tuesday. And then the following week, that same group of students would attend Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And that would be the reverse for the other half of the class. So attending Thursday and Friday 1 week, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. All students would stay in their current schools because we have half of the students. So we would be able to maintain the community. In this model, the teachers would be certified staff 2 to 3 days a week. So that is our 6 feet social distance model with half of the class receiving 2 or 3 days a week of instruction. Next slide, please. In variation 2, we wanted to look at how to increase in-person learning. In this model, we would have to spread students across the district to maintain the 6 feet social distancing and adding an extra day of in-person learning to 3 days for grades pre-K to 6. And then in grades 7 through 12, 2 days of in-person learning. So in that box there, there's a potential example. So if we took an average high school, Hughes STEM High School, they would come in 2 days a week to their school, but we would have to use other schools from Taft, Vine, Carthage, and Rothenberg. We would need 44 more classrooms to spread out to get the 6 feet of additional space. We also looked at Mount Airy, where we would keep our pre-K to 3 in the elementary buildings, and move our 4th through 6th grade to a high school. So there would be multiple elementary schools, 4th through 6th, at the high school. An example for Mount Airy would be Aiken. As far as instructional time with our certified staff for pre-K to 6, that would be 1.5 total days. And then for our 7th through 12, 1 day. This model is very complex with logistics, from transportation to classroom design and assignment and resources. On to variation 3, which we heard some comments from our public. And again, we were looking to increase time at our elementary. So in order to maintain the 6 feet of social distancing, we looked at engaging community spaces. So elementary would again use not only the elementary schools, but the high school buildings in person 4 days a week, 1 day remote, where our 7th through 12th graders, we would need 350 spaces, assuming if we had 15 students in a classroom to maintain the 6 feet apart social distancing. So we are currently in conversations, and our superintendent gave you a brief overview with some of the places that we reached out to, that they are using some of the spaces. Others provided some limited space for us, and we will continue to have those conversations. So that is under blended learning, 6 feet of social distancing, and 3 models. And on the next slide, it has all 3 on one slide. Now on to our last 2 options. Next slide, please. Which is around in-person learning, 5 or 4 days a week with 3 feet of social distancing. So in 5 days, all students will be in their current buildings and receiving 5 days of instruction with their teachers. Or 4 days a week with 1 day remote, receiving 4 days of instruction with their teacher. But again, this is 3 feet of social distancing. However, the 31 CDC guidance principles, the other ones would be maintained. Next slide, please. Jen will talk about the cost for each model. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So this slide tries to summarize the additional costs for each of the different models. There are some common cost drivers that go across all of them. Those being additional nurses, bus monitors on all of our buses, increase in what we think is going to be teacher substitute costs due to illness, additional technology of $7 million, and additional cleaning supplies that kind of grow with the models, because the more often you have students and the more number of students you have in the building, your cleaning costs are going to go up. So what I'm trying to show you is that the current year at budget at $657 million. Each different plan has an estimated cost increase, and then we've reduced that cost by money in the CARES Act. So we have a net additional add. And we know from the 5-year forecast that our budget limit for next year, in order to preserve enough cash to get through the next 2 years, has to be it can't go over $625 million, the general fund. So for each model, I'm showing you what kinds of reductions we would have to come up with in order to afford that model. Hope that makes sense to everybody. And so there's the Model 3 is the most expensive model, and that's because transportation goes up exponentially with the 6 feet on the bus, so distancing on the bus, the number of drivers, and the number of additional routes that will be needed to accommodate all those students when you can only get half the kids on the bus or a third of the kids on the bus because of social distancing rules. So there is a concern that there isn't enough transportation services out there to accommodate that need and the number of additional buses and bus drivers that would needed, excuse me, that would be needed. So next slide.
So in this slide, we put all 5 models with the considerations. So if you look at option 1, blended learning, 2 days a week in person, and we brought back the academic and safety risk. So for blended, 2 days a week, it falls in medium for academic and safety. It also lists the cost and some considerations, and the considerations down there talks about being in your current school and creating a community and a comfort level for all of our students. In option 2, it is also a medium academic, social, emotional, and safety risk. The cost is there, along with the complexity of logistics from transportation and assigning classroom space. Option 3, our last variation of blended learning, where there's 4 days in person for pre-K to 6, 2 days, 7 through 12, if we can access community space. Again, medium for academics and safety. There is the cost, and the consideration is really around, can we gain the space and the significant transportation that will go along with that model. And our in-person, there are low academic risk, but in a medium-high range for safety. Our academic costs are there, and a consideration for the 4-day in-person and 5-day in-person is the consideration of elementary childcare. Next slide, please. Our next slide, we just wanted to remind the public of CDA, Cincinnati Digital Academy. There is a website there, digitalacademy.cps-k12.org, where you can find out more information. So any of those options that does not fit, we have a full-time digital academy for students in grades K through 12. Next slide, please. And here we want to give you a summary of what some local counties and school districts are doing. In Warren County, they have decided as a group 5 days per week in person, but allowing families to commit a semester at a time, or a fully remote option, but it's a different, separate online curriculum. Claremont County have come together and decided the same thing. And Hamilton County is in conversation. They're looking at all options, but no decisions have been made as a group. Next slide, please. And our superintendent will come up and share our next steps.
All right, thank you. So right before I share the next steps, Krista, I want to ask you to go back to the slide that presents all 5 models and the risk levels. If you can go back there for me. Excellent, thank you. So when we really look at this slide and we break this slide down in terms of risk levels, we would be in the high risk category on the health side if we didn't do temperature checks, everyone wasn't wearing a mask, we didn't have nurses in our buildings, we weren't doing the extra cleaning that's needed, we wouldn't have the hand sanitizers, children's hospital wouldn't be working with us, we wouldn't have the staggered schedule. So as you can see, I'm saying all the things that if you did absolutely nothing, that would put you in a high risk category as it relates to health concerns. On the slide that was right before this, you were able to see that our treasurer outlined some very specific things that we were wanting to add should we be in in-person situation next year to our schools to make sure that they're safer. So a registered nurse, we want a registered nurse in each building. We want more substitutes. We want masks. We want testing. So all of these things are in place, which we are looking to fund either through the district or through the CARES Act, then it would not put us in a high risk category as it relates to the safety areas. So I just want to make sure that we highlight and go back to those 30 items that were identified by the CDC and those things that we will put in place to ensure the safety of everyone within our schools. Okay, so now I'm ready to go to the last slide, Krista. Thank you. So in terms of our next steps, I anticipate that the board will probably have another conversation on June the 29th. And then in the month of July, we would begin some detailed work with our school staffs to be able to really plan how this actually will work logistically in each of our buildings. To Sarah Trimble Oliver's point, we've already begun a lot of the work as it relates to this health and safety concerns in terms of how we opened the Ed Center and how we opened our schools in terms of our offices this summer, and also partnering with Children's Hospital to literally walk through buildings if a on-site option is chosen, that we can ensure the safety of everyone. And then in August, we would be able to provide the state of the schools, which would outline in detail all of the plans that are necessary and that will be in place to open the school year. So we will be working hard and at a very fast pace over the next several weeks to make sure that whatever plan is adopted, we'll be ready to open our schools, accelerating academic achievement, adhering to safety precaution measures for our young people and the adults who work with them, in addition to making some great strides as it relates to equity within our district. And so that concludes our presentation in terms of the variations for your consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you for your leadership team. We're now going to open the floor for questions, comments, and discussion from the board. Mike Morosky first.
Thank you, President Jones, and thank you, Superintendent Mitchell, Ms. Trimble Oliver, Ms. Amat, everybody, all the hard work that's gone into this. I would be remiss too if I didn't take a moment to thank all the speakers. That was extremely instructive for me and inspiring in a lot of ways to hear all of the demands for change and the tenacity with which you presented your points. I'll be brief. I believe I've made the point in public session before. I'm not interested in any plan that is not 6 feet, mandated 6 feet. I'm not worried about all the other safety precautions that we're taking because I know we're doing a really great job there. So to that end, I really like option 1, 2, and 3, and number 1, most attracted to, namely also because it seems to be the least hit to the budget. And I'll save some questions there if they don't come up later or if they aren't addressed as we discussed today. I also feel like, in this time of massive change occurring all around, We talking about equity. We talk about a lot about anti-racism and opening the school safely. I feel in a district that is predominantly black to not take extra precautions with 6 feet in a population that's disproportionately impacted by this disease would be, I couldn't do it. I couldn't get behind it. So I appreciate the reliance on science when presenting these. Right now, option number 1 looks good to me, and I'm just curious, the transportation piece, we could do option number 1. I mean, I heard the transportation is going to be a big issue, but with these options, we could do the first few options regarding transportation. Would there be a potential that in our policy committee, we would need to look at potentially transportation policies, i.e. distance of where kids live? Something I'm trying to wrap my brain around as I decide.
So I'm going to ask Sarah, I'm going to tee it up and ask Sarah to join in. So transportation would be easier with option 1 because you're transporting half of the kids on any given day. Option 3 would pose a real challenge because you're taking kids all over the city, from kids who are normally at an elementary school to high school and high school to elementary schools. And so both options 2 and 3 would be probably kind of challenging as it relates to transportation.
Okay.
Sarah, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, that was perfectly correct.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about number 1 that's really attractive to me, and then I'll pass the mic, is the piece about remaining in the same school buildings that the kids have grown accustomed to. So thanks for all the hard work on this, and I'm sure other questions will come up, but I will pass it on.
Okay, so we have Ms. Bates first, Ms. Bauer, and then Mr. Messer.
Yes, I mean, this really is a balancing act, and not just financially, but safety-wise, academically. We can't have our kids at an academic disadvantage, yet can't, have our children ill. It's going to require more thought on my part to be able to come forward and say what I, would support. But if we don't have kids in school and parents have to stay home, how is this economy even going to restart? We need to offer one of these options, that's obvious, but another additional option would be to come up with a plan to upgrade the digital academy. And this, would be an option for families who don't want to send their kids into schools where they'd be in contact with other children and teachers, and also, an option for the teachers who are at risk, either their medical condition, or that they're perhaps caregivers for high risk individuals. But I would support the option of the digital academy for those who want to move there by suggesting a dual enrollment, so that there's a seat held at the home school when the children want to come back, when there's a vaccination, when the families feel it's safe, and also for the teachers. So going to be interesting conversation with all of this, but I really do think we need to offer an option at the digital academy for those who do not want 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, and that would be for the children and for the teachers.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Ms. Bowers, followed by Mr. Messer.
Yes, thank you, President Jones. I would like to commend the administration for going back and just brainstorming of how to expand the partnerships with space availability, particularly with Paul Brown Stadium, Great American Ballpark, the Freedom Center, Duke Energy, just kind of thinking outside the box. That was pretty impressive. I heard one of the speakers say that, but I'm glad that you were able to express that we had explored those options as well. So thinking along the same lines. One of the things that I think that I want to make sure that we are cognizant of, and the superintendent gave us a timeline for the June 29th board discussion. There was a timeline for July, there was a timeline for August. I want to make us aware that we just, at some point in our timeline, when are we going to be inclusive of partners and all of the scheme of things? And I heard one speaker talk about OT and PT, which that's a service, but understanding equity and making sure that our schools are getting what they need. At some point in time, those partners have to be brought in to the table. Once the decision is made, I want to make sure that that's in the timeline also, so that they can make sure that they're accommodating and providing the supports that those specific schools need as part of the resources that they may need. So I want to make sure that we consider that and keep that in the forefront when we're doing our timeline.
Okay. Mr. Messer, we're going to let you go, but I just wanted to comment, Pam, Ms. Powers, it broke up a lot. I don't know that that's
okay.
On your part, but technology. Well, we can hear you, but I'm just saying for those people who are sort of moderating this, that's a huge problem for us. But anyway, we got the gist of it. We got the gist.
All right.
Yeah.
I got this.
Yeah.
Listen,
can you hear me?
If you can speak up just a tad bit louder.
Okay. Well, first, I also want to say thank you to all the people that spoke during our public input session, and I think kudos then goes to the administration team that's been working on this, because I have been seeing the things that have been talked about very deliberately included in the discussions. That committee brought a lot of those things forward. So, I feel like we've got a lot of commonality, which is a great thing, of things that the community's concerned about, that our staff's concerned about, the board's concerned about. So I'm pleasantly surprised that we do have what I feel is a whole lot of commonality between all of our various stakeholder groups. I absolutely believe that, if we can keep our students in their buildings that they're familiar with, and as much as possible. Now, I will just say, as a parent of a couple of kids that are coming back to the district, some people may think I'm just absolutely nuts when I say this, but I don't know that there's really a big difference between 3 and 6 feet. Just thinking about how squirrely my kids are. And, I just am trying to figure out, I had somebody told me that there was a school where they were building plexiglass partitions around where the children are going to be seated. And I'm like, ooh, especially for a Montessori family like us, that already gave me just unbelievably uncomfortable feelings. But then as we start to think about Montessori specifically, my family's experience, I don't know that 3 and 6 in that environment really makes all that different. So, I think as we kind of come back to the table and make final decisions, because I also want to think about the families who can't afford child care, the families that have a single parent. It is a big deal whether or not we go 5 days or 2 to 3 days. And I want to make the decision that's best. And I want safety of our staff and our students, to sure that we keep that at the forefront. I think everybody agrees with that. But I just would like to understand, if we say, hey, we're going to go 6 instead of 3, that means some families are going to have to figure out what in the world to do with childcare, or God forbid, some kids are going to have to be at home because they just have no other option. I want to really understand how exactly we're going to get 6 feet versus 3 feet. How you're going to keep my son Olivier that 3 extra feet from everybody else at all times, and make sure, because if we have variation in that. So that's the piece where I'm struggling. I want my safety is first priority. I'd love to have the kids in their buildings, and I'd love to see them 5 days, just simply because of it's the overwhelming majority of the letters, emails, and phone calls that I've gotten. So I guess the only thing I have out there is, how do you keep a child 3 feet versus 6 feet? And what does that look like?
Thank you. Mr. Lindy?
Thanks, President Jones. I will be very, very brief. I just want to do two things. The first is thank the superintendent and her team for the presentation. I am so appreciative of the creativity and rigor with which the team has approached this, and just think that this is going to be a very, very, very challenging situation regardless of what we choose. And I want to just say thank you for the careful thinking and clear options. The second thing I wanted to say is 6 feet feels very, very important to me. And I'm one person, and we're going to have to make a decision as a group. I get that. But I hear 100% the enormous challenges with kids at home. My wife and I both work full time and have had 2 kids at home for the last several months. And yet, my personal position at the moment, I'm open to being moved on this, is that we have a responsibility to do everything we possibly can to do this safely and responsibly. And that 6 feet piece feels like a really big deal to me. And I'm looking forward to engaging further on this over the course of the next week.
Okay. Ms. Bolton, and then Mr. Morosky again. Ms. Bolton?
Thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate it. It's when you're in a crisis, it's hard to think beyond that crisis. And God knows we're in a crisis. And when we think of that, our first primary responsibility is to get us through the crisis, but also not necessarily to get us through the crisis and destroy ourselves in the long run, whether it's financially or academically or all of the other services that our children and families receive as a result of a full week. I'm not prepared to say I won't do this or I will do this. I appreciated what Ben just said, that, you can be moved. I would hope that somehow we can reach a unanimous consensus, but we might not. So be it. But my point is, I do believe that the children need to stay in their buildings. I think they've been through enough trauma. I do think that our teenagers need to be treated with the same amount of respect and care as our little people do. I do think we have to involve our families' considerations regarding childcare. This is so disruptive for whether you're rich or you're not rich or whether you're middle class. I don't care. If you tell people that we're not sure what days we're going to be on or off, or guess what, you're in charge of finding ways to deal with it. So those are some of my considerations. Frankly, I don't think the 6 feet is necessarily doable 24/7. A kid's going to hug their first grade teacher. Teens that are doing project-based learning or kids that are doing Montessori are going to be working in groups. It's as simple as that. And 20% of our children need intervention specialists all the time. So to my way of thinking, I think we could eliminate the third option. First of all, it costs too much money, and plus there's not enough resources to do that one anyway. But as we move ahead, I appreciate what the superintendent and all of the other folks have done, which is give us a risk management approach to this. And that's what we have to determine. There's risk, safety risk, but there's also risk of the children not receiving the kinds of services that they need. There's risk to families not being able to do what they can do because they don't have the money to pay for childcare. There's risk also that all the strides that we have made financially, academically, and enrollment will stop, especially if those people that are our peers around the state, or as Mrs. Bates always mentions, our peers locally, are finding some way to serve their families better than we're able to serve ours. So I don't know what I would do yet, but I think there's risk in not having nearly a full week, and there's risk financially and academically and service-wise to say that the 6-foot piece is an absolute.
Okay, Ms. Morosky.
Thank you, President Jones, and thank you to everybody, all my colleagues that have spoken. You've given me a lot of food for thought, and especially Mr. Messer and Ms. Bolton talking about the child care piece. And it's something that I think about a lot, and I've deliberated a lot about over these past couple weeks. And as I think most of you know, I'm on the board of Groundwork Ohio, so I spend a lot of time thinking about child care. And the fact is, half the child care centers aren't ever going to reopen. And so we're in a crisis regardless of what we do. And then our decision is going to add to that crisis. And that's a hard thing. And I know it is for all of us to be in a position to make that decision. And I think just to give some maybe more clarity on my staunch adamance of not really being willing to consider 3 feet, it's based on the fact, A, the doctors I've talked to who are involved with the COVID, and B, I wish I could make these decisions about all these different things, but I can't. We have an opportunity to make a decision for our schools. And, comparing to the suburban districts or other districts, I feel gets into apples and oranges territory in a lot of ways. And I'm not comfortable doing that either. And I can maybe, I'm always open to considering other options, and at the 6 feet, I'm with Mr. Messer. I mean, there's no way. You have a little kid and Miss Bolton. We're not going to have tape measures out there, but I just feel a responsibility to aspire to like the golden mean or whatever. I'm not using the right thing, but you get my point. To aspire to it, if we can, and maybe that's Pollyanna. I think most of that's been beaten out of me, but I think that's something good to which we should try to aspire. So I appreciate all y'all's comments, and I'm grateful to be afforded the opportunity to make this decision with you all, as difficult as it is, because I trust and respect your thoughts as well.
Okay, and then I'll just close this discussion out. Hopefully nobody has any other questions or comments, because we do want to move on. But I again want to thank the leadership team for providing. It's a ton of information. It's a lot to absorb. My brain right now is like putty, so I'm not prepared to talk about any preferences. But what I did was I took copious notes from the folks who spoke, and I'm listening to all of you guys, and I'm kind of intertwined with what everybody said. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to just digest all of this and be prepared for a rational decision and a rational conversation about it. And then to close it out, I'll just say this because I think it's pretty funny. My daughter, everybody knows my daughter is a kindergarten teacher. She's the mom of a preschooler and a daycare kid. She said to me, Mom, if we go back to school, if I go back to school full time, you're going to be the teacher for however many days and the daycare provider. I don't think I could handle that. So I appreciate Ben. I know what you're going through, Ryan. I know what all of you are going through for that. But it's a hard decision. So I think we'll come together and have more conversation and make a decision or give guidance to the planning. So if there's no more questions or comments, we can move on. Are we good? Okay. So we do have one very, I'm hoping, short conversation around the board meeting calendar. Ms. Bolton, that will be you.
Yes, very quickly, and it's possible that Mrs. Bruckner or somebody might show this calendar, but if we don't, that's okay too, because it'll probably get an email. As you know, we have to create not only the school calendar, especially as it pertains to this coming year with COVID, but the calendar for board activity from January to December 30th or whatever. you all had Ryan and I kind of poll you and talk about it, and we came up with the fact that you all were still interested in the 4 o'clock and the 6:30, 3 meetings a month, and maybe 1 in July, 2 retreats, what have you. So what board staff has done is put together that kind of calendar to get close to where they have to print it. And of course, it's on hold until we decide this other calendar as well. But what we'll do is send out what Ms. Bruckner put together, which is all the various national meetings that we sometimes attend, and also some of the, when graduations might be occurring. So we just need to kind of make a decision soon about that calendar board meeting time, so she will be sending that out to you. Ryan, did I get everything covered there?
Absolutely.
Yep, baby, we're on it.
Okay.
It's the land, but yes.
Any questions or comments from the board members? Okay, thank you, Ms. Bolton and Mr. Messer, for working on that. Okay, so we're going to move through our resolutions, and I am going to push people to be quick, but thorough. So we'll start with Mr. Morosky. Please present the resolution.
Yes, I believe my first one is 5310, Health Services. And this resolution, so we in Policy Committee, as folks who have been tuning in know that we were meeting as sort of an as-needed basis. Now we're back on our regular sort of rhythm. We'll be meeting again July 10th at 3:30. But we took kind of a pause and we started meeting as the administration needed us to meet to amend current policies in light of COVID-19. So that's the backstory for all of these. The first one, 5310 on health services, adds language to the effect of consistent with federal, state, and local health guidelines. Students may be required to submit to temperature screenings or to respond to questions about symptoms or recent exposures, etc. It's not substantive. It's just adding language in light of COVID. Again, policy 5310, health services. I present the resolution to amend the policy as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Wagner, roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yeah. Mr. Morosky?
Yes, resolution amending board policy 5320, immunization. Again, very similar. I'll read excerpt of some of the language that was added. These, of course, are all available to be viewed by the public. We added a piece. The board further requires students enrolled in grades 7 through 12 during or after the school year beginning in 2016 be immunized against meningococcal disease. I didn't say, well, whatever. Let me say it in accordance with, I was an English teacher. Yeah, that's why I sought out the smart doctors to help me with this decision. I don't know the words. With the administration procedures prescribed by the Ohio Department of Health. And then one last piece regarding chickenpox. In the case of a chickenpox epidemic, superintendent or designee may deny admission to student otherwise exempted from chickenpox immunization requirement. So again, updates in light of our current situation. I present a resolution amending board policy 5320, immunization as written.
Thank you. Need a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? Ms. Wagner?
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Morosky, your last resolution here.
All right, here's my last one. Resolution amending board policy 7540.06, virtual private network, or otherwise known as VPN. this again in light of COVID-19, in addition to some just pretty basic word changes like excising Cincinnati Public Schools and replacing it with the one word district. The rest of it was literally just cleaning up language that was not even like in 21st century language. So it's a pretty mundane, just clean up. Those who have been on policy committee kind of know what I'm talking about. Nothing substantive. So I present resolution amending board policy 7540.06 VPN as written.
Thank you. Need a second?
Second.
Thanks. Discussion. Ms. Wagner?
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Okay, Ms. Bowers, please present
Yes.
the resolution.
I have resolution amending board policy 8450, control communicable diseases. I present this resolution as written.
Thank you. Second? Second?
Second.
All right, thanks. Discussion? Ms. Wagner?
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Bowers. Did we just do you?
I have another one.
Okay, there you go.
A resolution amending board policy 8900, animals in schools. I present this resolution as written.
Thanks. Second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Ms. Wagner?
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Thank you. Ms. Bates, please present the resolution.
Yeah. Let's see. That is the
Ad hoc.
fiscal year. Oh,
Board bylaws, ad hoc resolution.
yes. Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's been so long, you forgot?
Okay, I have a resolution amending board bylaws. I present this resolution as printed for adoption.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks. Discussion? Ms. Wagner?
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Okay, Ms. Bolton, you have the next two. Please present the resolution.
Thank you. First one I'm presenting is a resolution for fiscal year 2019 to 2020 final annual appropriations resolution. I present it as written, and what it deals with is closing out the year. I will, in discussion, ask the treasurer just to answer one or two questions, but I present as written and hope for approval.
Okay, need a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mr. Messer. Discussion?
Yes, if I could, if it's possible for the treasurer to describe the purpose of this quickly, but also the total dollar amount, because it appears to be somewhat different than the dollar amount we were using in the previous discussion about the models.
Right. So the previous discussion in the models was talking about next year, this is talking about this fiscal year. The dollar value is higher than you anticipated because it includes $9.7 million of temporary advances to other funds. So by state law, none of our funds can operate in a deficit. Because our state and federal grants, we pay the money and then we ask for reimbursement. If we don't get the reimbursement by the time we close the books, the general fund has to advance those monies to that fund, keep them in a positive balance. That's the $9 million, and it's the transfers and advances is listed in the treasurer's report if you want to see what the funds are. But that money just gets immediately returned in July. So it's just a way to close out the year in a positive for every fund that we have.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Ms. Wagner.
Mrs. Bates.
Aye.
Ms. Bolton.
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers.
Aye.
Mr. Lindy.
Aye.
Mr. Messer.
Aye.
Mr. Morosky.
Yes.
President Jones.
Yes. Ms. Bolton.
Yes, the second one I have is for resolution for fiscal year 20 to 21, the temporary appropriations resolution. And the important piece here is that, as you know, we determined several weeks ago that we would be unable, without all the knowledge that we needed, because other folks are still deciding things too, that we would not be able to do a final appropriation for next year or a final budget. And so what this points out is that our target amount for our budget for this coming year is the $625 million, and that we are going to be forwarding on September 30th of 2020 a final rendition of this. So this is dealing with the board and the treasurer saying we really need more information before we go full tilt. And so appreciate the treasurer's work on this. So it's a kind of, as it says, a temporary appropriations resolution to get us through until September 30th. Thank you. I would propose and hope for approval.
Okay. Do we need a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Ms. Wagner? Yes. Ms. Wagner.
If I'd just like to add a little bit. So these resolutions have to be filed with the Hamilton County Budget Commission, along with the certificate of resources. So I have to certify that we have enough revenue to cover all these appropriations that you're doing. You appropriate money by the fund level, and so that it's a responsibility of the Hamilton Budget Commission to make sure that we're operating within our means. And so because of the current year's budget, that was $657 million, was a temporary increase to kick off the strategic plan. The plan was always to go back to a normal spend. And so that got us closer to the 625. Actually, it was 642. And then with the reduced revenues in the forecast, we had to go down to 625 in order to keep a positive cash balance in the next year, so we don't have to go back to the public. Ms. Bolton's right. We asked for a 90-day temporary appropriation to give us time to figure out what our new model is going to be and how we're going to fund it and what changes we're going to have to make in with it. And just recalling that we have to make a $33 million reduction regardless of what plan you pick. Whatever plan you pick of those expenses, we'll have to reduce those as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the explanation. So any other questions or comments? Okay, Ms. Wagner.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Ms. Bates, please present the final resolution for board consideration.
Yes, I have a resolution to transfer funds to the School Fund from the General Fund, Title I, Title IIA, for fiscal year 2020 through 2021. I present this resolution as printed for adoption.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks. Discussion.
I would ask
Yes.
to give a brief explanation for the public about this transfer.
Thank you.
Certainly happy to. So the school-wide pool is a fund that's was created by the No Child Left Behind Act that allows us to commingle our general funds with federal funds so that schools can use those funds more effectively to serve the children of their building. In order to move the money from the general fund, so there is no revenue source of the school-wide pool fund. Monies come from other funds, which are listed there, the general fund, Title I, and Title IIA. But I need board authority in order to move dollars from one fund to the other fund. So I'm not using the word fund too much, but that's the only way to source that fund is to transfer money from one fund to another. That answer your question?
Yes.
It's an annual requirement for us to do.
Yes. Ms. Bauer.
Yes. Ms. Wagner, can you explain to me the difference between the Title I and Title I stimulus monies?
Yeah, they're separate grants. Title I is based on it's for students with economically disadvantaged students, and so that's based on the federal census of children that are in need. The stimulus is where the schools individually apply for those grants. So they have a different purpose. I can give you more details in a written report, because I'm not answering just off the top of my head.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Any other discussion? Ms. Wagner, please call roll.
Ms. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. All righty, moving forward. Superintendent, do you have a report?
The only report that I have this evening is the written superintendent's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. Do board members have questions or comments? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the revised recommendations of the superintendent?
So moved.
So moved.
Second? Discussion? Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who was the second.
Okay, Ms. Bowers.
Bowers. Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Borowski?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. I need a motion to approve the report of the treasurer.
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Messer, any discussion? Yes, Ms. Bolton.
Yes, just one. I was glad to see the amount of money that we were looking at regarding the IB programming, at least sending Mr. Beauchamp to gain information about IB, as he is the principal at Roberts. And the idea that maybe we're going to be thinking about reintroducing that program. I know we've talked about it. The superintendent's mentioned it, I think, a year and a half ago. So I'm glad to start to see the wheels turning on that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yes.
Ms. Wagner? Ms. Bowers?
No, Ms. Wagner, I was just wanting to clarify that in this written report, there's the Title I definitions are in here, but it's still not clear on this. I mean, is a district applying for Title I based on the need, and then a school can apply for the stimulus in addition to what the district is applying for?
Yeah, the Title I Title I disadvantage just comes to us. It's non-competitive. The Title I stimulus is a competitive grant, I think.
Okay, any other questions?
No.
All right, Ms. Wagner?
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Aye.
Mr. Lindy?
Aye.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones?
Yes. Okay, inquiries and updates? Mr. Lindy?
Thanks, President Jones. I was moved by many of the people who spoke tonight about the police in Cincinnati Public Schools. And the reason this is an inquiry is because I'm not exactly sure what the right next step on this is. I think people made some very interesting points from lots of different angles. And I also know that, like, we have a particular relationship with CPD that a lot of people don't know, which is that they're paid for by the city of Cincinnati, not by Cincinnati Public Schools. And that there's an agreement that lays out really clearly what police can and can't do. And I learned this week that some cities have actually traveled to Cincinnati Public Schools to see the ways in which this could be a good example of what that looks like. And at the same time, it's also clear in listening to folks that some people have had a very different experience than the one that I think we aspire to. And so I don't know where this goes. My question was, is there some way that that's some part of your team, Laura, and I'm not even sure on what timeline, could look at, maybe this is a board committee, I'm genuinely not sure, could look at what are some ideas or some options for what we could do around our relationship with CPD that is responsive to the moment that we're in and what we want to be true for kids and for CPS. And what are some ideas that we haven't tried before that we could try? What are the trade-offs associated with those different ideas? Maybe where we wind up is exactly where we are today. Maybe we come up with something we've never thought of before. I'm not sure. But that seems like something that's worth exploring. And I'm genuinely not sure where it goes next. So that's my inquiry. And I'm interested in where the right place for that is.
Okay. So it is an inquiry. It sounds like it's also an assignment. You're asking the superintendent and administration to take a look at that, look at ideas and develop ideas and options for how we might massage that a little bit. I can't think of any other way to describe it. Am I capturing?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think the thing I want to acknowledge is there's a lot happening right now. And I think that figuring out the big pieces of what next year looks like academically, I can understand why that needs to be priority one.
Okay.
And I also think there's a way to not totally put it on the back burner, but make some meaningful progress on it. And I trust Laura and her team to figure out the right way to do that.
Okay. So I listed that as number one under assignments as well. Okay. All right. Mr. Morosky, I saw your hand.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay. Any other assignments? Mr. Messer?
Yeah, well, one thing, somebody brought up, with 1,000 people on here, I think, it's down a little bit, but I think it's important to clarify. There was a comment that said that students or parents were told that the board demanded or fully supported the uniforms. My children don't wear uniforms. I question, I'm just curious, kind of what is the process for that? As somebody who's not had that come up since I've joined the board, why do we have some schools that have a uniform and some don't? Is there engagement around that? And maybe it's all the right decision, but it's never been put before me as a vote to say, hey, these schools have uniforms and these don't. So, maybe we could just kind of just understand the process for that so we could.
Okay. Is this Superintendent, do you want to respond?
Yes. So This, to my knowledge, has been an administrative issue, and it's a school by school decision, but it involves the LSDMC and the parents. So usually there's a year engagement before the implementation of a uniform process begins, where the LSDMC will explore it, we'll talk about it, and then there's a parent survey to get everyone ready for the decision, if the decision is to move forward with the uniform. At the high school levels, especially at one point in time when we had more than one high school sharing a building, different schools wore different colors to help differentiate students within the building. And even within some high schools today, some grade level wears different colors to differentiate the grade levels. And yeah, so it's an LSDMC issue with parents.
Okay. Ms. Bowers?
Just to confirm what Superintendent said, being a part of several LSMCs, several different schools in the past, Board Member Messer, and each school was different. It was an internal individual school decision. The LSMC and parents come up with that for one of their schools.
Okay, great. Any other inquiry, update? All right, assignments. We have one, that's all. The last call for assignments.
You want us to come up with some more, Carolyn?
No, we're good. Okay, well, having no other business, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you all. I want to thank our attendees. Superintendent, thank you and your team for the hard work. Board members, thank you for hanging in there. And good night.
Thank you, everybody.
See you.